Good morning. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Architectural Review Board. Today is Thursday, May 21st. Could we have a call to order, please?
Chair Pop,
Present.
Vice Chair Greer,
Here.
Board Member Liu,
Here.
Board Member Kim.
Here.
Thank you.
Now is the time when we ask any member of the public to speak to an item not on the agenda, and I don't have any cards. I don't see anyone in the audience waiting to talk, so we'll open and close the public portion of the hearing and move right on to agenda changes, additions, and deletions. Do we have any? I'm seeing a no. That's fine. So we'll step forward. We don't have minutes to approve today, but I know they're coming for a subsequent hearing, and so we'll move right into the public hearing today with our formal review of 1450 Page Mill Road. Request by Jim Inglis, Stanford University, for major architectural review for the demolition of the two existing buildings on site totaling 59,539 square feet and construction of a new two-story 74,400 square foot office building. Environmental assessment, City of Palo Alto, Stanford Development Agreement and Lease Project Environmental Impacts Report, State Clearinghouse number 20030822103 and exemption 15302, replacement and construction. The zoning district is RP Research Park. And with that, if I could ask the staff to provide a report.
Good morning, Chair Pop and board members. My name is Jody Gerhardt, Senior Planner with the City of Palo Alto. So the project before you this morning is located at 1450 Page Mill Road. There are currently two structures on the site, totaling just under 60,000 square feet. The applicant is proposing to demolish these buildings and to construct a new two-story building having an FAR of the 74,400. There would also be approximately 3,000 square feet of amenity space and associated site and landscaping improvements. The building elevations would have more of a glass, zinc metal, and terracotta cladding to help break up the massing of the building, and there is a full landscaping plan provided in the plan set. On November 20th, 2014, the ARB did conduct a preliminary review on this project, and staff and the applicant have worked to address your concerns that were brought up at that time. Like the rest of the research park area, the site is covered by the Mayfield Development Agreement, and so Stanford has asked that this property be designated as a Mayfield receiver site, and I'll discuss that in a second. Portions of the agreement do grant Stanford the right to demolish other buildings and to transfer or to relocate up to 300,000 square feet of office space. And so this site has been designated to receive 14,861 square feet of that square footage. This leaves Stanford with approximately 95,000 square feet for future allocation across the research park area. And given that it is a receiver site, it is allowed an FAR of up to 0.5. And they are in conformance with that requirement. They've also met the setback requirements of the RP zone. They have the 20-foot side setbacks. There is a 50-foot special setback along Page Mill Road. And then they've given a generous rear setback of 170 feet. And there's some landscaping in the rear you'll see in the plan set as well to help buffer this new office development from the new housing that's happening along California Avenue. So in the staff report, I did have a question about landscaping originally, about the street trees along Page Mill Road. The county does require that street trees be set back a distance to provide additional safety. That has actually been addressed in this latest plan set, so that's no longer a concern. Also, I'll have the applicant talk a little bit more about the construction road that's going through this project. This 1450 Page Mill site is being used for truck traffic that's coming from the construction that's happening on the California Avenue housing site. And so there is a condition of approval for this project, just making sure that that construction road stays open to the agreed upon time, which I believe is September 30th. And there's just some refinements that the applicant would like to make to that condition. With all of that, staff is recommending that the ARB recommend to the Director of Planning to approve the proposed project based upon the architecture review findings and the conditions of approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now if the applicant has a presentation, give you 10 minutes for that. Feel free to come forward and introduce yourself, and we'll set the clock.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Jim Inglis with Stanford Real Estate, and we really appreciate the thoughtful comments and the positive feedback that we got from you guys at the preliminary. And we have been working hard to refine the project, and we're really excited about bringing this new elegant building into the Stanford Research Park. With no more ado, I will hand off the presentation to Eric Suberkrab with Studios Architecture and Gary Lehman with the Gazzardo Partnership. We do have several members here as necessary for fielding questions. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning. Eric Suberkrab with Studios Architecture. And it's good to be in front of you again with respect to 1450. And we appreciated your comments, like Jim said, and the last time in the preliminary ARB, and for positive reinforcement. Since then, we have been developing or addressing those comments and developing the details for the project, and I'd like to share that with you. But maybe before we go there, it might be good to refresh yourselves on some of the primary concepts behind the project. We think engagement is the primary goal for the project, and we feel this project should speak to its position on Page Mill, that it should be a good community participant, that it should have a welcoming vocabulary in its orientation, and encourage a sort of engagement with people going by the site. So we think the ultimate vocabulary here should be forward-looking, attractive, timeless, and sustainable. This is a slide showing the organization with respect to context. And you notice the large roof. The idea here behind the large roof is really to act as an organizing device. In one hand being a container for the various more dynamic components below it. And then secondly, to shield the shade and shield the fenestration. And lastly, to act as a platform for photovoltaics. The other thing that's important to us, the primary entry is going to be a western orientation, a west-facing traffic orientation. So it's a right-hand turn. So the project's entry wants to work from a vehicular point of view, but also from a pedestrian point of view. So this porte cochere, we feel, works in both of those positions as a drop-off point. And since the last time we've met, we've started developing some of the details here. So we've included a fritting on the glass canopy to help occlude some of the dirt that one might see. Carrying some of that same attitude down the processional glass leading into the space, both from the standpoint of occluding it, the view in, but also from the standpoint of bird safety. We've further sort of wrapped that fritting around the perimeter of the building, so from the base of the building up to the 30-inch plinth, which basically is also the same height as most furniture. And you can see from this slide here some of our attitude expressed in terms of engagement. So there's the entry, but there's also exterior spaces that are shielded on the southwest and enjoy a nice position vis-a-vis the sun. We're also trying to maintain the pastoral attitudes that I think the Research Park has. So the building there in the section below is nestled into the site. It's terraced at both the uphill side and the downhill side, going from left to right downhill. And the location also basically deals with the housing above, there's a buffer there, and then in the front, there's a healthy apron of landscaping and utilization, exterior utilization, to start this attitude of an indoor-outdoor architecture. And we've been able to do that because much of the parking's underground, half the parking is underground, so you get this dialogue between Page Mill and the building that's much more pastoral. You can see the sort of the entry and the wayfinding here we think is pretty intuitive. Public entry at the front there where the red arrow is, and then the parking here, employee entrance here, and service over here. The other, I think, key issue here is we're trying to develop a loft-like building that we think is a good incubator for the development of research, development of officing of the future. And to that end, the attitude of an indoor-outdoor attitude seems very compatible. So we have terracing here on the north side and then a larger terrace here on the south side. We've added a stair since we last met to help facilitate organization back, or communication back and forth between the two levels. Sorry. The other question that came up last time is what have we done to in a sense, validate the protection of glazing on this building. So this is probably the worst case scenario in the summer, looking at both the second floor and the first floor. And if you see the black outline of the building, if you see any sort of gray latticing, that's the sun coming in. So we have some minor intrusion here at 9 a.m., more of a cool sun, and very little in the 5 p.m. time period. And of course, at noon, everything is protected. The materiality here, for lack of a better phrase, we're looking at a honest material palette. And by that, what we mean is the metal treatment here is zinc. It's not painted. It's natural. They'll develop a patina over time. Terracotta, which is also integral material. All that working with the glass. And here you see the north elevation, and you see how the components are sheathed in different materials, and here from the perspective, the zinc, the terracotta, and you can see how those start to work together. In the rear here, we have architecturally treated concrete, warm buff color, covered with vines that both protect or occlude the some of the equipment and the access into the garage. You had also pointed out at the last time that maybe the south elevation needed a little bit more of a scalar breakdown, if you please. We've added some components here at the upper left that both help in reducing heat gain, but also help in breaking up the facade. And then we have a stair here that also helps integrate what you'll see in a minute from Gary on the exterior space. So much of the south facade, though, is downhill, 10-foot downhill from the neighboring building. So it's generally never viewed in its totality, largely because of the vegetation and the hillside. So speaking of vegetation, Gary, would you like to further that?
Good morning. Gary Lehman with the Gazzardo Partnership. I'd like to just briefly take you through the landscape design. As Eric mentioned, we have a strong sense of arrival here at this auto court. We have rich materials that are being used both for the paving as well as for the vegetation, the lighting. There's a very nice composition that works at this main entry area. Bicycle parking is conveniently located right near the front door. We have a good relationship with our neighbor relative to the retaining wall that occurs along that eastern edge. The wall will essentially be buried in vegetation, both from the downhill side and from the uphill side, and we're using an integral color Ardex treatment on the wall face that will be sort of a very muted gray-brown color just to basically disappear. But we think this will create just a very nice green element across that whole edge. We're also a good neighbor relative to the residential developments happening over on California Avenue. We've done a very extensive landscape berm treatment in addition to the generous setback, a mixed variety of fast-growing trees there. So we're looking to have an area there that really creates a very strong visual barrier there to create a good neighbor relationship. Also, as Eric mentioned, we've spent a lot of time developing the exterior spaces of the patios, again, having nice sun and shade relationships to make them truly usable. And as Eric mentioned, the stair addition here is also making it a much more viable, dynamic sort of space. So we think there's a lot of nice, useful spaces that can be happening year-round. If I can just, maybe 30 seconds?
Sure.
So one thing we really keyed on too is the opportunity to be able to take our stormwater treatment along Page Mill and create a really nice entry experience there that's both visible from an auto vehicular entrance as well as a pedestrian entry. We've chosen a lot of plant materials with a nice variety of color, texture, as well as using a stone material in actually the floor of the biotreatment itself. So it creates a sort of a scaled sort of treatment that'll look good initially, and then as the plant materials mature, it'll give sort of a dry arroyo feel for most of the year. We know that was an area of interest, and that's something we took a lot of in pride in being able to develop something we think's really fun there. So I do have material samples here. If you'd like to see those, be happy to bring them up. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Great presentation. So with that, I think we'll return to the board here for any technical questions. And then I don't have any cards from the public at this point. If there is someone here who wishes to speak about this project, do go get a card and hand it in. So Alex, if you don't mind, we'll start with you this morning.
I have no questions.
And Hugh.
Neither do I.
Great. And not having any cards, we'll open and close the public portion of the hearing and then just move right directly to board discussion. So very quickly, Alex, we're back to you. Thanks.
So thank you for your presentation, and in particular, thank you for adding all the site context for all the new buildings that are being constructed around the site. It was actually very useful. And it's very telling. You know, you did far more than I was thinking about, but that was actually really great. And I mean, to me, I guess the building and landscape are very handsome. It's as far as it can go in like the suburban context of putting up office building on an expressway. The context really shows there's sort of like a lack of linkages between the different parcels, but I know that's the way that Stanford wants it, and so that's the way it is. It's sort of disappointing. I think also to I think as Jody had mentioned, that lack of street trees right on Page Mill Road is also a weakness, but that's sort of the county's jurisdiction, so that's disappointing again. I think on the building design, I do like all the improvements to the glass and whatnot, and I don't think I have any issues with that, except the mechanical screen looks tall. So I hope that maybe as you go through more of the mechanical design, that there's a way of lowering it less than 12 feet if possible. And also on the building design, I think I was looking for just like trash enclosure details, and I think there was references to it being in the architectural plans, but I didn't see it, so if that could come back to staff. And two, I was also looking for the light fixture cut sheets. I mean, you had the photometrics, and I know I saw a fairly standard like Guardco pull, so I don't think that there's any issue, but usually we get those submitted at least to staff for review. The photometrics look good. And then on the landscape, on the berm on the back, I wasn't quite sure what when I was looking at it yesterday, I wasn't quite sure what the retaining wall was doing, but now that you just described it, I think I understand that that's actually hiding the parking from the apartment building side. Right, so I get it now. It didn't make sense when I first looked at it, but I get it. We don't normally do that on the back of properties, right? In Research Park, it's usually done sort of closer to the street side. Yeah. And I think that's all that I have for this one. But I think for me, this is pretty good to go. I think we have some details yet to see.
Board Member Kim.
Yeah, thank you for coming back, and I really appreciated that the majority of the comments that we had made at the preliminaries were addressed, and I appreciated the way that you've addressed them. I also had a question about the CMU retaining wall. I actually still am not convinced that it's really hiding the parking if the berm is there and the berm is higher as it is. So it's kind of a minor thing, but just looking at it quickly and not having the full understanding of it, I don't think it would be quite necessary. Could you explain it? Is that really to hide the parking, and how does that work if the berm is higher? Is it just at the high angle of the apartments, or?
So we went ahead and put in the small retaining wall. It's only 30 inches high,
Right.
Because we didn't want to have any guardrails or other devices there. But really, the intent of the wall was to be able to allow the soil to be mounted up higher, so that we not only had vegetation, but we had the
So the
grade
berm
working for
actually
us to give us
starts
more
from
separation. Yeah.
partly up the retaining wall?
And
I
so
see.
it would not only be a visual, but also acoustical, just by having that grade working for us.
Okay. And then I think most of the other comments that I had, Alex kind of covered. I also think that the mechanical screen is very high, and I'm just wondering if it really has to be that high. And then there's one other comment. Yeah, thank you for addressing the glazing and the south elevation. Those were some of my primary concerns at the preliminary, so I appreciated how that was addressed. And I think that's kind of it for now. I'm also pretty ready to approve the project with some of the similar conditions that Board Member Liu had made. Thank you.
Vice Chair Guyer.
Thank you. Couple of things. One of the issues initially I noticed in here, the whole comment about trying to get a reprieve from the parking requirement for the 3,200 square feet of amenities. And it says, because it will probably be a cafeteria. And that I can understand, but then it also says, but this interior area will not be designed until the tenant's selected. So I don't really like the idea of possibly having an extra 3,200 square feet of office space when, I mean, we've all been there where a tenant comes in, and just because we planned it a certain way doesn't mean it gets actually done that way. I'd rather see something that either mandates that to be an amenity space so we can have that, rather than just saying, well, we'll see what happens. As far as the design, I like the overall design. A couple of minor things. I think the columns in front, based on the height, seem a bit weak. And I mean, I know there's not a whole lot you can do about that, but it just, not that I expect to see 4-foot diameter columns there, just something that, when a column gets to be what looks to be, 35 feet high or whatever, and they're probably, a foot in diameter, it just seems weak. The north elevation is probably, again, I think you've done a wonderful job on the other three. The north elevation, again, is a little bland in that sort of the midsection. I would have preferred to see that broken up a little bit rather than just this massive continuous wall. And that's basically it. I would like to see, again, like we do on so many buildings, the first, say, 3 feet or so on the second floor is clear glass. I'd like to see something done there. Again, the whole, which we've done time and time again, that I don't want to see that end up becoming a junk pile if there's an office space there or something else. So do something to address that. Other than that, that's it for me.
All right, moving right along. So I definitely appreciate the comments that the other board members have made here in regard to some of their concerns. Let me just start by saying that it was a pleasure to review this package. Very complete, very detailed, all the information that I needed. You know, I think I would encourage staff to use a package like this to exhibit to other applicants what we're looking for, because it was.
Picking the thing up.
What's that?
I said, you get a hernia picking the thing up.
It's fine with me. I'd rather have that. You know, I think that this kind of completeness and detail helps us to move through the process very quickly. That and the fact that I do think that your design, as you said, is very forward-looking, very attractive. You know, the thing that jumps out to me over and over again as I'm looking at the drawings is when you look at A3.0.2, which are the site context, or not that one, I'm sorry, that's the section. You have some great site context elevations in here. And it's just so clear, you know, exactly what Alex was describing. You know, the context is that there's no context, everything's so far away. But a building of this character, it's very handsome and I think very appropriate for the site on which it sits. I'll echo the comments about the mechanical screen. I think that the height of that seems challenging. And working on projects similar to this, I'm aware that it's not unusual for mechanical equipment to, with a supporting structure underneath it, need to be 12 feet tall. It's very common for that kind of height to occur. With that consideration, I think you've done such a nice job articulating the building. I'd like to ask you to take one more pass at the mechanical screen and see if there isn't something that you might do to help to make that feel a little more horizontal and integrated into the building. Right now, it really does appear as a box just set on top of the roof, and it just looks like a mechanical screen. And the rest of the building seems so elegant and thoughtful that I really would like to see that integrated in some other way. But it's not a significant concern on my part, because I do think it's pretty far back. It fades back. It's not really challenging, and it needs to be that height in order to control sound and vision. I wanted to just ask Gary, this issue we've got with setting trees back along Page Mill Road 7 feet, how do you feel about that? Is that something we should be pushing back on? Do we have the ability to push back on that, or do you feel like this is a good direction that the county's going and we should just stick with it?
We don't have any issue with the 7-foot setback. I think the trees that are specified there are large-scale trees, and we're going to have, you know, a nice soil base for them to grow in. So I fully expect that the canopy there will still be significant. So I think that'll work out fine.
That's great. All right, so I think the only thing I wanted to ask about is you had mentioned a couple of things that you were concerned about in terms of the glass and the column.
Right.
Do you want to ask the rest of the board whether they would support changing that, or whether they feel the same way as you? I mean, you made these comments, and I don't want them to just disappear, but I'm personally fine with the glass the way it is, and I like the slender character of the columns relative to the
Like I said,
horizontal sunshades. And
you know, you get 4 architects in one spot, you get 4 architects in one spot, you're going to get 4 different considerations. Anyway.
That's why there's not just one of us.
I know.
Right.
No, they're not heartburn enough to make an issue out of.
Okay. All right. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we approve this project as conditioned by the staff report, and with the inclusion of some additional evaluation of the mechanical screen, trash enclosure, and light fixture cut sheets being provided to staff for review, and add a condition of approval that indicates that no less than 3,234 square feet of space be dedicated for amenities, or the parking be reconsidered.
Excuse me, I'm Julie Jones of Perkins Coie on behalf of Stanford, and staff had asked me to get up and mention one request that we had made with regard to the conditions of approval.
Go ahead.
And it had to do with conditions at page 1 and page 4 having to do with construction access through the 1450 Page Mill site over to the Upper California Avenue residential housing site, as Jody Gerhardt had mentioned. That is in place through September 30th, 2015. And we'd recommended and talked with, or communicated with Senior Assistant City Attorney Cara Silver about it, and she had okayed it, and I understand that it's fine with staff. And I could read it, read the proposed language if that's helpful, or it has been vetted with the City Attorney's Office and with staff. It's a clarification of the extent of the duration of time of that access, which is to September 30th, 2015, and that it has to do with construction trucks going back and forth.
So, since we don't have it in front of us, if you don't mind, would you go ahead and just read that for us?
Sure.
And that way we're all aware of it and it's into the record, and then we'll talk about adding that in.
Certainly. At paragraph 4 of the conditions of approval on page 1, construction access, as noted in the approved construction logistics plan for 1451 to 1601 California Avenue, this property shall remain open for construction truck traffic through September 30, 2015. And then at paragraph 15, page 4 of the conditions of approval, the last 2 sentences of the paragraph, the plan shall also include the use of the 1450 Page Mill site for construction truck access for the Mayfield residential development through September 30, 2015. Plot and label the areas associated with the Mayfield residential development access and show how construction conflicts will be avoided.
Great, and I'll anticipate that you've provided a copy of that language to staff so they can copy that verbatim.
Yes, we have.
Okay, great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I don't have any concern adding that language to the conditions and to the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. All right, any discussion? Great, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that passes 4-0-0-0. Any final comments? You don't need to, but if there's anything you'd want to say in closing, happy to have you take a minute or two.
As Eric pointed out, he reminded me of a second reason that the roof screen is more prominent than we're used to seeing. I had thought of mentioning something about that because that seems to be an important point here. There's 2 things driving that. One is we've pushed it to the north side of the building to allow us to provide additional solar panels if the tenant chooses to put solar panels on the building. So the second thing is that the HVAC units that we use now are higher efficiency. So, excuse me, the package is larger for the same tonnage. That's how they get the efficiency up. So it reduces the static pressure and increases the efficiency, and that's what we've been using. So we have a larger unit, and we've pushed it north. So we will lower it as much as we can, but those are the trade-offs.
So I definitely applaud the efficiency and the goal of having as much solar on the roof as possible. I think not my concern, I'll just clarify a little bit beyond the motion, is that is not for the height and it's not for the size. It's really just the articulation of it. That currently it's just a single surface, single material box. And I think that the building has so much character and so much interest, and there's been so much thought put into that. And I'm hoping that some additional thought and finer grain can be added to the roof screen in order to help minimize its perception of height.
Okay.
Great.
So more materiality as opposed to mass.
Not trying to direct it. I'm really not trying to direct what changes you should make. I think it was really just more a goal of saying it'd be great to have a little more thought put into that and see if there isn't a way to integrate more with the architecture of the building.
Great.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
All right.
We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the nice project. All right. So moving forward then, we're going to tackle our second item, which is 203 Forest Avenue. Request by Ken Hayes Architects, Incorporated, on behalf of 203 Forest Avenue LLC, for architectural review of a proposal to construct a new 4,999 square foot residential addition, adding to an existing 4,626 square foot commercial building on a 5,000 square foot site in the downtown commercial CDCP zoning district. Environmental assessment, categorical exemption.
I have to
With
present.
that,
Dr. Christie.
whenever we're ready, we'll
Yes. You're receiving some items, Amy French here, receiving items that the applicant has brought to the staff table and to the ARB. Hopefully there's one available to the public as well. Maybe put it on the wall, yeah. So thank you. The proposed dwelling and residential garage would be added to an existing drive-through commercial building that was constructed in 1958 as a dry cleaning service. The ground floor use and the ground floor and the mezzanine have been in office use for several years now. And this is the first formal hearing for this project. The applicant did not elect to come through the preliminary review process. Staff has only provided you the generic findings for determination on the ARB findings. And we are recommending the ARB hear from the public today, provide some input, and continue the review to a date certain. Several reasons for that. The ARB is actually allowed 3 hearings for major projects. This originally came in as a minor project as under 5,000 square feet. But there are 2 reasons why we consider it a major project at this point, is that the square footage has creeped up over that 5,000 square foot threshold, and the project may be considered a significant alteration to the character and appearance of the existing building in the downtown, and so it's something to consider. The project is within the ground floor pedestrian combining districts, and so I want to mention a couple things. That is, again, the ground floor retail use, if it were in place as of when the ground floor overlay was placed on this site in 2013, then we would see retail with this application. The applicant states that the existing office use that's been in place since before the change will continue on this site even through construction, and therefore there's not going to be an interruption there. So the existing office use can remain on the mezzanine and first floor. The pedestrian overlay district seeks pedestrian-friendly buildings, and of course the existing building doesn't really have a lot of that on those facades facing the 2 streets. The additions would not significantly improve that situation, and so the ARB is asked to consider how the building could maybe improve upon that, or additional measures that might be used to improve that. We're also seeking ARB's input on a couple of other things. The site circulation related to the ADA parking space that is under the canopy. Currently they drive through and drive through Forest and out onto Emerson, and so that is going to be blocked by some improvements along Forest that eliminate the curb cut and provide for the trees there in the street sidewalk, but something to look at as far as cars backing out to the ADA space onto Forest. The second one is that the residential open space design, to look at that. And the third is the building massing and transition with the second floor placement based on adjacent properties. So basically, we will, come back with to address the findings at a future hearing. Finding number 4, of course, is about compatibility of the project design with the character of areas that have unified or historic character. It doesn't say a historic district, and so we've been kind of in this territory for several projects now where we're talking about this. The Emerson block has a historic character, as asserted in the downtown design guide. It does support several Category 2 buildings, I think 2 of them, and 2 Category 4 buildings. There's also the Pacific Art League on the Forest Street, a couple buildings away. That's a Category 2. And these are shown on the map in your report. I'll let Matt Weintraub, who supports the HRB, make some comments about what the HRB will be asked to review on May 28th.
Thank you, Planner Matthew Weintraub. As indicated by the council's direction, on another recent application, there are two areas that the HRB may be asked to comment on for a project of this type. One area is the actual HRE finding that has been presented or recommended that there is not an actual resource on the site. So that is one area that the HRB may comment on. And the other area would be the compatibility of the new project with the historic and architectural character of the Emerson Street area, which is identified as having a special character, but again, not attaining the level of being a historic district. So, so those are the two areas that the HRB previously has been asked by council to look at on a similar application. And so those are the areas that staff would recommend that the HRB also look at for this application. Thank you.
And then finally, Christy Fong, the project planner, has a few things.
So staff received one public correspondence since the ARB packet day, and it's provided in places in front of you today. There's also a copy at the back for the public to look at. That concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Christy. So that concludes the staff report? Okay, great. Let me, before we get to the presentation, I just want to ask one quick question. So, Amy, you mentioned that the square footage is creeping up. I think that was the term you used. Has the square footage changed from what the applicant initially submitted as the project, and that was what was used to determine whether this is a minor or a major? And are you intending to change that here?
Well, so there's two factors about the minor major. And this is in the code. The code states that if it's over 5,000 square feet, it's major floor area. And it also states that if it's a visual significance, a change to an existing building, that can be a major. So that's kind of what we're here today to discuss as well. The significance of the change. As far as the square footage, my understanding is that there was some discrepancy from plan set page to plan set page that, in one place said one thing, but that's been resolved in the current plan set that you have. I believe that the garage area for the residential use is not counting towards that 4,999 square feet.
So we're still below the 5,000 square foot threshold.
It is, but then there's a trash area that counts, so part of this when staff receives applications is, the applicant gives us something.
So sort of a technical question here about what this is.
What counts as floor area.
So are you looking for the board to have discussion about whether this is major or minor as part of our talk here, or are you making a recommendation or?
Yeah. We don't think it's something that is materially. I guess the only thing is that if it's major, then you're allowed 3 hearings. You may not need 3 hearings to.
And I'm sorry, if it's minor.
2 hearings.
2 hearings. Okay.
Yeah, and then after which you need to recommend to the director. Yeah. So that's kind of the big difference.
It might be to their benefit to actually be major so that they could have a 3rd hearing if it's necessary.
Yeah. So I think the qualitative discussion is more about the significance of the change to the existing building.
Right, because if we're not able to get through this in 2 hearings, we would have to reject the project and they'd have to go back to reapply if it was a minor.
Yes, or the decision would be made without the ARB's recommendation.
Right.
Yeah, that's basically the
All right,
implication. Or with the, I should say, with the applicant's concurrence that another hearing, as we've seen in another project that was heard 4 times.
Right. Okay. All right, that's helpful. Thank you very much. So with that, let's go forward to our presentation. Mr. Hayes, if you can come forward. As usual, we'll have 10 minutes for you.
Great, thank you. Actually, my presentation's not been loaded. Do I do it? Oh. No, I don't need it. Good morning, Chair Pop, members of the board. My name is Ken Hayes with Hayes Group Architects, and I'll be presenting the project. Before I start, I want to thank planner Christy Fong and Amy French and Mr. Weintraub for their help in bringing the application before you today. I'm sure you're all familiar with the site here on the corner of Emerson and Forest. It's a 5,000 square foot parcel with an existing 4,620 square foot commercial building on the property. Across the street is a 5-story mixed-use project, and we have a single-story office building here, an open parking lot with a 1-story building here. Next door we have a 2-story building, and then the Palo Alto Art League building here that's been actually recently remodeled. At the end of the street we have the Epiphany Hotel, which is multi-stories tall, as well as the building on the corner of Hamilton and Emerson there. I think it's 300 Hamilton. No, probably not. 100 Hamilton. The streetscape along Forest is actually fairly weak. There's no the edge of the block face pretty much disappears when it gets into this area here. You have a large parking lot on this side, and it leaks away on this side as it heads down Emerson. This is the demarcation zone between the CDC, more dense area of the downtown, and the SOFA district, which is south of here. And this demonstrates that here. This is all SOFA, RT 35, and then CDC, GFP, and then obviously CDC-P behind us. Existing view on Emerson looking north. You see the 5-story building here. The parking lot's on the right. Our site is right here. This is looking south on Forest. I'm sorry, west on Forest, looking towards the mountains. Again, the tall building there, parking lot on the left, and then our project site is on the right. East on Forest, our project site located right here, and the big block of City Hall beyond. Existing pictures, our site is here, and then we have Delphina next door. This big cork oak is going to stay. It's a beautiful tree, and Dave Doctor recommends keeping that. This wall of the existing building turns out to be a major shear wall for our project, and then you can see the area here that typically is filled with cars, as you see here in this shot. I think there's 4 or 5 cars that are stuffed into here that either back out or pull forward through the driveway. To the east on on Forest is a mid-century 2-story modern building here with canopies and large openings that I'll show you how they relate to our building later. Our program is to provide a new single-family. This is a single-family dwelling above the existing commercial, and the commercial tenant's going to stay with minimal disruption. We've been working with a contractor and an engineer on how to do that. We're going to provide parking for the residential unit, create outdoor living spaces, both on the ground floor and on the second floor, enhance the streetscape frontage, obviously, of both Forest and Emerson with new landscape ideas that really we haven't used in Palo Alto before, create commercial front porch space to try to utilize that area in front of the building that we really can't change, provide photovoltaic panels on the roof and use some sustainable materials, daylighting, et cetera, and then also relate to materials and building features in the context. This is the site plan of the project. Due north is sort of through here like it is downtown. So this is a very bright corner of the building, and we're thinking that the enhanced sidewalk treatment on the sides of the buildings with this new landscape feature out in front, as well as the landscaping along Emerson, really going to enhance that as opposed to having the drive-through that comes through like that. It also will enhance the health of the cork oak that is right here, right now. And this was something Dave Doctor actually recommended. And so we really thought it would be a great idea to help soften the street. We also have a seat wall with planters along here for people to kind of hang out in front of the building. We have this front porch area that I'm calling it, that's kind of like this covered urban space that is for the office tenants, but certainly people can cut through this space. This is intended to be an entrance and an entrance here. There's a canopy at this entrance. We have a parking space here, which would be one ADA space with the existing driveway cut width. And then the residential parking will be provided in a garage down at this end of the building there. Our residential entry is here off of Forest. And then we also have our egress stair for the residential unit, kind of that comes down over the existing building, and this provides access to the second floor, and our elevator is located there. So the front door really is here on the street. The second floor is a 3-bedroom unit, and with really kind of planned around outdoor space at the back, get it off the street, it's a little more private, and we have sort of variety of morning sun and afternoon shade on that rooftop terrace. The context here, this is, I think, Vive down the street, an historic building, has this transom kind of vocabulary. The Gordon Biersch building also has this transom vocabulary, but also this sort of outline framework that we're picking up on. I'd also like to note that the window fenestration pattern of Vive in that transom is a very rectangular kind of repetitive vocabulary that we're using again in a horizontal fashion in our building. The Acme Glass building is a poured-in-place, board-formed concrete building on 3 sides, the beautiful tile on the front. The Buca di Beppo building is a board-formed concrete, poured concrete building 2 doors down, and Delfina is also a board-formed concrete building. And so we're picking up on that board-formed concrete aesthetic in our building. The planters across the street at the 5-story mixed-use building are just a gray concrete. They're not board-formed everywhere. In some places they are. The Epiphany Hotel at the end of the block is kind of iconic now, I think, and anchoring that, and it has a very strong form, this outline block essentially that's been carved away, and it also has these wood panels or wood-like panels that are the cladding, and so we're picking up on that material in our project. And then lastly, the perforated metal panel that occurs at the ground floor is going to be used on this project at the transoms. This is the forest elevation. You can see from the mid-century building next door, we transitioned up to our roof terrace, and it steps up again. I always like to define my circulation. This is the elevator, board-formed concrete, and it kind of creates this support mechanism for the single-family unit above that is just defined singularly by this, the wood block, if you will, above. We have created the transoms here and also on the forest side, on that south side of the building. When you walk into the front porch, the idea is that you're going to get light coming in through the perforated metal to create sort of an interesting dappled light in that front porch area. We see that as an area that's devoid of the cars that are there today. We need to replace, there's one car in the parking assessment district that has to remain. We have no other choice. It has to go here, and if it's on site, it has to be accessible. The frequency of use will probably be much lower than it is today, and certainly the quantity of cars, singular as opposed to 4 or 5 cars that are typically parked there today, pulling out over the sidewalk. This is the planting that would be in the public right-of-way, and then we have a seat wall here that wraps the corner that's 2 feet high. People can hang out there. We have, I think, horsetail planted in there, and this is iron plant on both street frontages. The canopy of the building next door pulls across and becomes the top of the poured-in-place concrete wall, and then we separate the upper floor from that concrete wall by this band of glass, and then the stair, you can see it coming up inside. This block here with that rectangle is also picked up here, and if we go to Forest, you can see the vocabulary of windows is similar to Vive down the street, and then again the transition to Delfina next door. These are some 3D views of the building to give you an idea, of what that looks like in the planting and how this will be a much more enhanced with amenities for pedestrians. Canopies here and canopies down here for the entry points. These are the transoms I was talking about, and then the pattern of the windows. View from the corner. And then we put some views in of that front porch here. You can see that with the rich paving, if you look on the landscape plan, there's the linear pavers that would be throughout this area. We have lighting at night that will make those perforated panels glow. Another view of that area. And then without the trees, and then with trees. Thank you. Yeah, we'd actually like to ask for your approval today, possibly with conditions on this project.
Okay. So let's go to the board for any technical questions you might have. Board Member Kim, if we could start with you, please.
Sure, thanks for your presentation, Ken. I appreciate it. My questions for the staff. The parking situation, if this becomes a major project, can the existing parking situation remain?
Yes, that's, whether it's minor or major is irrelevant. I mean, they're keeping a building in place, and there's, as Mr. Hayes said, there's only so many options here. To add a residential unit, they need 2 covered parking spaces. You could put them under the canopy, but if you use that other driveway, it's not wide enough to provide both the parking space and the handicap ADA path. So pretty much what they've proposed is what they is what's the option as far as on-site parking. And they have paid into the assessment over the years for the parking spaces not provided on site for the ground floor.
Okay,
Use.
and I did read in the staff report that the applicant intends to subdivide the commercial and residential uses. So is that just a subdivision between commercial being separate from residential, or is there a plan to subdivide the residential, or?
To board members, so the applicants declared their intent to subdivide the commercial space with the residential unit.
All right, and then is there a public art requirement on the project?
The public art requirement will be triggered depending on the value of a project, and right now it is under the thresholds.
Okay, just out of curiosity, what is the threshold?
I have to check
Oh,
the
that's
number.
fine. That's fine, thank you. Those are all my technical questions for now.
Board Member Guyer, Vice Chair Guyer.
Yeah, I have a quick question on, and I don't know whether it's staff or the applicant, on the mezzanine level, you have an area that's called study. I'm assuming that's going to be associated with the residential area rather than the office space.
It is. Yeah, only the residential area. In fact, it's hard to see it from the plans, but that stairway.
Right, I figured it goes from the stairway into that area. Okay, I thought that's the way I read it, but I wasn't sure.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need for questions at the moment.
Board Member Liu.
I don't have any technical questions.
The only technical question I have at this point is, in looking at the way the parking is arranged, we have an unusual condition here where a car will be in the handicap accessible space, and also the residential parking, and need to back out across the sidewalk and into the public way. I don't recall any precedent for this in the city. Where this type of parking occurs. Typically, cars move around on the site and come back out facing forward, not backing out across the sidewalk. Is there a concern on staff's part about this? Is there something we should be talking about with this?
Yeah, so the concern about the ADA space, it's awkward because, yeah, planning and transportation are not comfortable with this arrangement of backing out. Although, as Ken mentioned, they are backing out today because there's no monitoring of that situation. The urban forestry staff wanted...
They're backing out of the spot where the residential spaces go, but...
I think also because several cars just jam in there, as Mr. Hayes said.
Right, but it is a drive-through. It's
a drive-through,
it's
but
the way
not,
they're using it that's causing them to do that, but there's actually,
right.
There is a drive-through path.
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
So for a single unit all over town, you do find people backing out over a driveway. Typically, these are not found in a downtown.
I just saw mention of this in the staff report. I wanted to know whether it's something that we should be
We're concerned about
addressing, or whether we should.
It's weighing the tree health and closure of that Emerson curb cut for the sake of the tree and pedestrian environment on the sidewalk versus safety along Forest backing a car out.
It looks
So-
like Mr. Kleiman has
I
something
thought
to
I'd
say.
give you just a little bit of background on how we kind of arrived at the design. Originally, we had both sides open the way they are now. And I met with Dave Doctor out there, and we talked about the tree. When I first met Dave, when I bought this building years ago, that tree was in really bad shape. We did some trimming, we made some other changes, and now it's okay. And when I met Dave there, he said, yeah, the tree's gonna go. And I said, there's no way to save it? And he said, not unless we can give it more water. So I said, well, what if we closed this side and added some soil and watering and, he said, that would be amazing if transportation will go for it because, you've got this thing. And I said, transportation may like it because we can add another parking space on the street. So I went to then Jaime, who, as you know, is gone, and said, what about this? How would you feel about this? We'd have to back out. He said, it's something we'll have to study. He then left. I talked with Raphael. I would say that because it's a single space and because the there is actually a handicap space there in the exact same location. If you look closely, it has the painted lines. And because it's, there's always too many cars there, they've always backed out. It's never been a problem. I asked the former owners who built the building, they said, we never had an accident, we never had an objection, it was never an issue. So if it worked for 60 years or 50 years, it's a single space. I'm not saying we want to set a precedent in Palo Alto for backing out, but I think it's a 150-year-old tree that we can save. If you want to open it up and have a drive-through, it really is a choice between, I think, the tree dying. I asked Dave later, is there any special paving we could do if we kept it open? He said yes, but that's less effective. So we really looked at all the options, and that basically dictated this design. And then Dave said, well, as long as you're doing it, then I want another tree. Then he wanted another tree on the other side. So there's actually 2 new trees, which is fine. I'm okay with that. I think it'll be great.
All right. Thank you very much.
Can I add in? There is a very small office building on Cambridge Avenue in the California downtown area that is a Carrasco building, but it has a kind of a garage carport. I think it was intended to be a carport, but they had to put in a garage door, and it has the handicapped spot backing out over that. So we've done it before. You might want to look. We could look at that building if that's caused problems. I haven't heard of anything. But I would just say that I think there are situations where it's happened before.
And I think on the residential, aren't we exempt because it's...
Oh, microphone, please.
Sorry. On the residential, aren't we exempt because it's a single family from the issue with the driveway? I'm not positive, but I thought I read that once.
So that would probably be beyond the purview of the Architecture Review Board, I think. My concern is just that if we do need to change the parking design, that it's likely to change the design of the building. And so that's why I was asking the question.
Sure.
We can ask the planning staff to make sure that we're conforming to all the regulations and that exceptions or not are taken into consideration.
That's correct. As far as the space for the tree that's existing, I was just looking at the pictures, asking Christy, gee, did anyone talk about a bulb out there? I know there's been other situations that, you increase the width of the planter or so, but to my knowledge, that hasn't been explored as a possible way of, retaining the curb cut.
So we'll potentially lose a space on the street, but...
Well, it looks like it's a red curb, so it's not being used as a space anyways. But, that would, of course, require some exploration.
But if the Architecture Review Board felt strongly about maintaining that pass-through drive, we might be able to ask staff to investigate that as an option.
Okay.
All right, so I think that's the board technical component. I don't have any cards from the public on this item.
There's one card there.
It's for Forest, for Lytton. Did you want to address this project?
yeah,
Okay, so
just-
if you, please come to the mic. Go ahead and indicate your name and information, and then when you're finished, if you would, please fill out a card for us.
Thank you, Chair Pop. Herb Borak. I was trying to understand the project from the plans posted on the walls, but since there are no floor plans showing how the residential floor area is divided between the 2 floors, I can't, verify the calculation of how much floor area is being used for residential, because from the plans, posted there, it looks like it's covering the entire site on both floors, but obviously that can't be correct because the total residential floor area, I believe, is 1.0. So that was my only question. Thank you.
And just to clarify, of course, as with every application, the documents are all available long in advance of the application on the web, and you're welcome to take a look at those. And if you have questions or further comments about that, please direct those to staff. So we'll close the public portion of the hearing and move back to the board now for discussion. And we'll begin again with Board Member Kim, please.
So I have some issues, but I guess just to start off, I think if I were to look at the building really on its own, I don't see immediate problems with it. I like, the majority of the material choices, but the real killer for me is really the site context. And, it's kind of been bothering me so much that I actually walked past there this morning before the meeting once more, and I just see a lot of issues. To kind of peruse through my list here, the first one is that large tree that we're talking about saving. I don't see it the correct size on any of the drawings, and I think it really affects that bedroom window, actually, next to Delphina. And even the massing of that, the current massing is kind of in line with the pizzeria next door, so that it's a 2-story space. And I think, to jump all of a sudden up to that 3 stories is kind of a big leap, especially with that blank wall right underneath of it. So massing is really kind of an issue for me. I see a lot of flat surfaces where there's a lot of articulation throughout the street and in the context of the site. I had a question regarding the corner treatment there. Is that supposed to be a structural column or?
Yes.
Okay. So is the sizing of that something that's already been taken into consideration, or is that just kind of a preliminary size of the column?
No, we've been working with an engineer.
Okay. And I think even with the parking, currently as it is, when people are backing out, because it is kind of open to the air, and you kind of see that corner being much more open than it is presented in these renderings, I think people have a good sense that a car is going to back out. But I think with the massing that you have presented here, if a car were to pull out, pedestrians are much more unaware that there could be a car parked in there and the car is going to back out. And so I think there are a lot of safety concerns with that spot. I think also if that spot were to be used for the office space, I don't know if the accessible route into the office actually works, because you have some planners that are above the loading zone.
It works. There's another drawing in there. Those are not supposed to be there.
Okay. And then continuing on the massing, I like that the porch is an open 2-story space, but I think the way that it's articulated, it doesn't feel that way. And I realize that it's the south corner, and I realize that there may be a need for shade, but I think it just feels very closed off to me. I think somebody passing through right now, kind of in the historical context, it's kind of like, cool, this used to be, I thought it was actually originally a gas station, but, it was a dry cleaners. And I think there's kind of some kind of a historic context that says, hey, that's kind of cool, but in this context, the way that it's presented with the massing, it just feels very enclosed. I don't see why you would be kind of drawn in there, and I don't even know if your eye would be drawn in there with all the shade that's cast inside. As far as the material choices, I'm fine with most of the materials. I do kind of question the metal panel. It seems a little bit too glossy for my take, but that's just kind of a minor comment. And then yeah, I think, again, context. If this building were on University or even Hamilton or Lytton, I could see how the massing might work, but I think it's so far away and right on that border of the SOFA district that I don't know that it's quite there yet for me to be able to approve the project today. Those are kind of my comments.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Vice Chair Guyer.
Okay, I guess when I first saw this, one of the biggest questions or concerns I have about it is the whole concept of compatibility. I mean, I'm looking at this as basically, it appears to be a approximately 5,000 square foot single-family residence on the top floor with another 1,500 square foot study. So we're talking about a 6,500 square foot single-family residence.
No, that's
that
not. It's 4,990. That includes the area of that study.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
saying what I was just told that bottom area on the second floor was going to be used by the residents.
It's included in the 4,999. So it's
Okay,
so
all
up
right,
above
whatever.
it's like 4,000. Yeah.
It's big. And the reality of it is, when you look at the design of the residence, it's got an approximate, 1,500 square foot great room with a patio that has the ability to have seating for 16 people, at least according to what the drawing is, and that's only the amount of chairs that are provided out there. It's just, to me, and then so you've got this massive single-family residence up there, and then you've got a tandem parking situation with two cars that, I mean, I know, tandem parking's been used for years, but the reality of it is it's out of necessity, not because it's a real good solution. And tandem parking usually ends up being where one car gets put in the garage and the other car gets put on the sidewalk somewhere. So, I mean, that's, I guess, where I'm having a big problem just with the whole concept of the thing is why. I mean, across the street, you've got, residences that, the concept of bringing residences into the downtown area. And here we've got a, 5,000 square foot area that could easily be subdivided into 2 or 3 units. And that brings, residences down into the downtown area, not one massive building like this. Okay, having given my little speech, as to the design, I mean, I don't know. To me, it's a very bland, rectangular box that, and especially I thought it was interesting when the panel, or I should say, when the color board came by. I had initially thought that maybe if it was wood, it may not look too bad. Then I come to find out that it's actually metal panels in sort of a pseudo wood something, I don't know. I think it looks like it's intended to look like wood, and I don't like that at all. To me, there are just so many things that don't work for me on a very basic level of compatibility that I'm not ready to do anything with this project.
All right, thank you. Board Member Liu.
So, yeah, thank you, Ken. I actually have sort of mixed minds with this project. There are parts of it I really like, and then the parts of it that I sort of question. I think we should also mention, I think that concept that has not been mentioned is reusing the existing building, and
that's the whole premise.
Right, I mean, there are very important sustainable design reasons for reusing the existing building, and that's actually very, very important. And so I would just say kudos to you for trying to keep the existing building. And I think that the proposals really is intriguing. I guess in my mind, the character-defining thing of Emerson Street are all of those transom windows, and I do like that you were trying to pick that up with the metal screen. I guess when I look at what you end up with in the portico share porch space, to me isn't really. To me, it's too closed off. It seems too dark and too closed off. So if there is a way of opening it up more, I think I'd be intrigued about it. I think the thing with the transom windows on Emerson is that you're actually looking in and you're actually seeing something, even if it's just whatever it is. This glimpse of something, and the spaces and all of those, and like Gordon Biersch and the other shops is actually really intriguing, and you actually don't really. I don't think you have that in this particular project. And then I think the second component is that if I were living in that unit up on the top floor, I would actually prefer to have the open space at the corner just for the solar orientation, and it's more open. I mean, I think that in Palo Alto, the open space, from residential units is actually nicer in the diagonal. Like you get sort of a larger view. I think also the other part of the context is, the Forest Plaza mixed-use condos and Shop Keenan's building all kind of have chamfered corners. There's some sort of erosion of space in the corner, and those buildings are all. I think that those buildings are different than the infill Emerson Street, restaurants and whatnot. The other concern I did have a little less concern about, but some minor concern, is that with your open space for the residential unit, it seems like it's pretty close to all of the mechanical ducts or the exhausts for like Delphina and maybe even Beppo's. Like it may not be, there may be a noise issue and there may be a smell issue. I'd be sort of inclined to put them farther away. I know it's not direct. I know it's not like you're directly there, but
yeah. It's the preferred orientation of my client, so I'm
in the shade.
So yeah, what he would prefer is to have the open space on the back side.
Just for privacy, mostly, or?
Privacy was one. Yeah. David wants to talk to.
Well, part of it was really wanting to.
David, could you speak in the microphone, because we're on TV.
Part of it was in discussing the project with my neighbors, both of whom encouraged it and wrote support letters. I felt that transitioning the height of the building, even though it's only 35 feet and could be theoretically 50, I just thought it really matches, the building to the east on Forest. And we looked at, Ken did kind of an initial design that had the corner open. We kind of looked at it. It's pretty noisy on that corner. It's surprising how much traffic is there. And we started thinking, how much would we use it? Would we go outside at that corner with the noise, and do we want to try to, create a little more private space? And then it just kind of gravitated. In fact, originally we had an internal courtyard, and as well as it was not a T-shaped outdoor space. It was kind of a long rectangle and an internal courtyard. Staff's interpretation of the code was that counted as square footage even if it was open. So we actually took that courtyard and slid it towards to the east and made it a T shape. And in a way, I'm actually glad that happened. I think the space works better, although it certainly does not kind of activate and open the corner up. So one of the things we've looked at is maybe doing both, having something on the corner that softens the corner, and we have a couple comments already that maybe that's what we should be doing, and I think we'll look at that again.
Great, thank you. Sure. And I do think stepping down the massing is important to the neighbors. And then I think the other thought I had about context was also the, what is it called? Is it Pacific Art League? What's on the corner? Right.
I think that's what it is.
I forgot the exact name of it, but I actually always like again, it has the transom windows, but it's also eclectic. It has a variety of things all up and down, and I would try to pick up on that. I think you're trying to do it a little bit with, you have your staircase on the Forest Avenue side, and I would encourage you to draw up on that as a precedent. On the issue of the portico share and parking, I think that's a really difficult situation. I would go for saving the tree over cars or whatever. Ideally, I would try, if it were possible, to put the handicap spot in in a garage. I think that's what happened on the project that I mentioned before on Cambridge. They put it in a garage, but they had a wider space. Because you have all the striping and the signage, and there's no way around that, and so it's really ugly, you know, like.
It's really a tough problem because we can't, as soon as we do that, then it's floor area that we have to count as floor area, and
I know.
we can't, you know, so it becomes problematic.
This is a very difficult situation. And so I understand where you are.
But I would like, you know, sort of good direction on whether you're going to support a car like we have shown, or whether you can't support a car like that, because this whole concept sort of is hinged on keeping that front porch and that car.
I mean, given the way the accessibility regulations are, I would say I would have to support your plan, even though I don't like it. But like, there's no out from the from ADA or the state accessibility requirements. Okay, and then I think the other thought that I had was the on the materials. I actually like that you picked up on the board form concrete. I like all of that. The wood, like metal panels.
I'm pretty sure that's what's on the Epiphany. It's identical.
Yeah, I was actually disappointed with that, and my recollection is that there were issues with that, and what we saw and what was built is slightly different. There are fire-rated issues right there because they were putting it on their canopy.
They're higher than 50 or 75 feet, I think.
Yeah.
Right. If you look at the material that's actually on the underside of the Walgreens, that is actually a wood product with exposed fasteners, and it's already started to warp.
Yeah, it doesn't look great.
That was, I think, going to be on the Epiphany, and then they changed to this material, which is frankly why we chose it, and it has had no issues. In fact, I asked the building manager the other day, said it's all they do is wash it.
I would say the Epiphany looks better than Walgreens. The Walgreens one does not look good enough. It looks like Formica with plastic.
Yeah, this looks like real wood. I mean, you know, it's a photographic process of actual wood panels.
Yeah, okay. And then I would say, like, I guess our main concerns with the Epiphany were all the joints and stuff like that. And theirs were more complicated than where you're
we have
showing.
far fewer joints. And this would not be exposed fastener. So this is all concealed fastener.
Okay. Okay, and then back to the courtyard a little bit, is that you were showing some, I guess it's the dumpsters in there? And it seemed like that was driving the height of the wall, and I was wondering if there's any way around that. Because I would ideally like the wall to be lower, just from a pedestrian point of view.
So I think the wall's 5 feet.
Yeah, which is to me not pedestrian friendly. And so if there's a way of putting the trash inside, I would.
The only way to bring it out, would be through the front doors. You know, you're not going to haul a dumpster through the front door. We did put the residential trash back here.
Back in the garage.
I don't know if you remember this. We asked about putting all of the trash in the garage, and we were told no, only the residential. They wouldn't let us do it. They didn't want us to mix the commercial with the residential, which I would do in a heartbeat. And then obviously we could lower the wall. It would be easy.
Yeah, because I mean, to me, like if we were saying like a regular fence code, I mean, I would say it's like 4 foot maximum, typically right at the property line. So I mean, I would think of that as
well, part of my thinking was that I'm trying to reinforce the block face too. So I mean, there's a space on the other side, but it's not necessarily a space that I want everybody to go inside. It's a front porch for the people that are there to come out. Certainly, it's an entry, but having the edge of the sidewalk defined is something that I was after, and so that 5 foot is like right at your eye height cutoff. You see above it, there's a space there, and it kind of adds a mystery to it. So as opposed to it just being open and seeing the car too.
Right. Yeah, screening the car.
But yeah, we would move that trash into the residential garage in a heartbeat, and would love direction there. and that's coming from green waste.
Yeah. And then the garage is narrow too, so that makes it all,
Yeah,
it's very challenging.
They'd have to be residential size totes.
Well, this is very challenging. Yes. Okay, I think this is all I have at the moment. Yeah, thank you. You have a very intriguing project here.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so you asked the question, and I'm just going to provide the response. I don't think the board is prepared to support the project today, even with some conditions. We're going to talk about how this should move forward, and I think everyone's been clear about saying that. So I'm going to try and provide very clear direction from my perspective as well, so that we can hopefully move you forward in one more hearing if this remains as a minor. And if we can't, then we'll talk to the board and to you about whether or not you'd be open to an additional hearing or where we need to go from that. But we'll try and, we'll try and work with you to keep things moving efficiently for you.
Thank you.
So, consistent with Alex's comments, I'm very torn about this building. If it was in a different location, I really appreciate the design. I think that the material choices, the character of the building, the way you've arranged the use of the spaces and separating the commercial from the residential is very thoughtful. The problem is that it's in the location it's in. And we're at the end of a block that has a sensitivity to it. I think, a number of people have already talked about the character of the existing buildings along that block and the transom windows and sort of the delicacy and the refinement of those buildings. And this has a very different character. And we were both at a meeting not long ago for 5 hours where the council spent quite a bit of time talking about context and compatibility. I appreciate that staff is forwarding this to the HRB now rather than later, and I think I'll look forward to hearing what they have to say about that. I really like the existing building. It is this very interesting little modernist piece in the downtown area. And as you mentioned, we are right at the edge of the CDC, creating this transition, and it serves as a bordering element between the neighborhood and the downtown in a number of ways. The corner lot itself is such a special condition, and this portico that's out there, and its little concrete screen, and its diagonal entrance, and these beautiful little diamond blocks that they've inserted into the building to add a little bit of character to what was otherwise, a very simple and frankly, very plain building, are nice. It doesn't have a lot of pedestrian character to it other than that really interesting portico element. And one of my major concerns is that you've blocked in that whole portico. I think Alex's comments about the height of the wall and the visual access into that are important to take into consideration, and I had the same concerns. While you could go to 50 feet high, there's no way you would ever get 50 feet on this building, right? It's in terms of context and all of those things, it wouldn't be possible. I think 35 is even a little bit of a push here.
We're at 32, I think.
So, thank you. So, just a couple of comments about that from my perspective. Again, I'm looking at the rhythm of Emerson Street and how those buildings look, what they appear as. The Acme Glass, beautiful little building. Beppo, very simple, not complicated building. Delphina, beautiful little building. And then we get to the corner, and there's an intensity to this, a lack of detail, a very different aesthetic that you're describing. And while I don't mind the design overall, I think that in this particular context, it's a little bit problematic. I like the board form concrete. I think that the character of that is very nice, and it adds a warmth and a detail that's helpful, but typically the board form concrete is what we're seeing on the sides of the building that are not facing the pedestrian way.
But certainly visible.
Certainly visible, but not not immediately adjacent to the pedestrian way. And because you're a corner building, you have some particular challenges because you've got, this long edge that would otherwise be like Acme up against a parking lot or, not really visible. So understanding that you're working within all those constraints and the challenge of meeting the pedestrian guidelines, I am concerned that closing off the portico, which is really the only pedestrian-friendly element in this building, really subtracts from the ability of this building to relate to the pedestrian in the same way. I'm challenged by the elevator element. I appreciate your aesthetic and your approach to this. It's something we talked about on the Kipling building as well, and I see it as such a divisive element in the streetscape, that there's this giant concrete wall that goes 30 plus feet high without any articulation at all. There's nothing else like that anywhere on Emerson or Forest. And I just have to say, I don't see how it belongs. And I think that we need to reevaluate that, to find a way to create some character and to bring the scale of that down, make it a little more comfortable. Right now, it's just severe. And as I said, sort of a divisive element. And we already have the garage separating one building from another, so it seems a little redundant in some ways. The Acme Glass building has all of this beautiful spandrel glass on it. And I like that you're picking up on the datum lines that are coming from other buildings on the street. I think that that's a very appropriate tactic. I think that there's an opportunity for you to start to pick up on some of the material as well. And perhaps one of the ways for you to get the transoms in is to start to utilize the opaque glass like Acme has on it in areas where you can't see into the building. Perhaps you use the metal screen if you wanted to instead of that, whatever your choices would be. And then in the areas where you have the metal screening and perhaps even expanding that a little bit, add some glass or something in there to allow you to see into that portico and make it a brighter space. The renderings that you put at places this morning are very helpful for me, but what I see is pretty dark space, pretty enclosed. The soffit drops down pretty far. Alex's comment about the transoms allowing you to really see into the building are really appropriate. I think, even as I look into, I want to say it's Tacolicious, you see the framing for their soffit that drops down, and they've been really careful to use painted metal studs, and they've arranged that in a way that is designed. And even though you're seeing into the building and you're seeing something that is what would otherwise be not desirable to really look at, they've made it interesting. And I think that you have the same opportunity here. We don't need to close this off just because it's a parking area or the underside of a soffit. Let us look into that, and it'll help to open up that corner. And the idea that at this intersection where there are other buildings that have eroded corners and have pulled back, and you're choosing to fill in the corner that was otherwise pulled back visually or otherwise, I think it's gone just a little too far. I'd like to see it pushed back a little bit. I too think that the balcony is on the wrong side of the building. I think that you'd probably have a very different response if the corner was eroded at the upper level as well. And I think that that could be pretty nice space. I don't see that as being a terrifically busy corner. I certainly see it being more pleasant to sit out and observe across than the mechanical that's on the roof next door. And so I know that's a choice a client is making.
Maybe he can do both.
But I just think that it seems to me there's an opportunity there to help to minimize the bulk of this building as it approaches the street and to open up the corner in a way. Maybe you create some reference to what the porte cochere was previously at an upper level pulling it back, some kind of a canopy that pokes out that mimics what was there. I don't know, I'm not intending to design your building, but I think that the fact that it's just a box that's extruded up at the maximum property line in an area where otherwise there are really these very delicate smaller buildings as the major context is challenging for me. And it's the one thing that I'm really getting hung up on, because I do like the materials. I don't mind the way you've arranged the building. I think that, as Vice Chair Guyer said, it would be great if this was 3 units, but that's a choice. Every owner has the choice to make that. And I think that if it was 3 units, you'd have a big parking problem.
Yeah,
right? And that would just exacerbate the costs and the challenge. And so, this is where we need to rethink what our parking requirements are. Because if things like parking are encouraging people not to add multiple smaller units, then we're sure doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, I mean, the residential parking cannot be paid for by in lieu. It has to be provided on site.
You have to be providing it. And in this particular case, I don't see how you could provide it. So you sort of don't have a choice. This is what you're going to build because it's the only thing you can build. And I think that's unfortunate. I think that's the summary of my comments. I'm open to anything here staff might want to add or ask in regard to how we're going to move the project forward, but it sounds like we're likely looking toward a continuance to come back with some additional design approach concepts. And I'm hearing that there's not a big problem from anyone about how the parking is arranged, and so I think we should go forward with continuing to use the parking
and close off
spaces the way that you're using them. I heard everyone say that the tree is more important, and I think we all sort of nodded when Alex said that, so I'm fine with that as well.
I have a follow-up question just related to the parking. So you have a tall garage space, and so what I'm sure you've considered options for using
lifts,
using that space. Is there?
We have mechanical.
One of the things that I promised my neighbors, and it frankly was maybe more important to me than them, but they all loved the idea, which I promised there would be no mechanical equipment on the roof. So what we're doing, and why you see a screened area above the garage, is we're sandwiching all the mechanical equipment above the parking and below the terrace, or 3rd floor, essentially. And we may have enough room to put a lift at the back and be able to park 3 cars. I'm just not sure yet. We haven't finished designing all the mechanical systems, but it'll be close. We might end up with 12 feet, which is kind of what you need.
So David, as I'm looking at sheet A3.4, which is your section, number 1, it looks to me like there's a pocket up there.
This section is not through where the section 1, Chair Pop, is that what you're looking at?
That's right.
Top, on the far left side of that says garage. That's towards the back of the garage. If you go towards Forest, that's where we have a loft that has the mechanical units in it.
Okay.
But let me point out, even if you could get a 3rd car in the garage, it would not supplant the handicap space. Right? Because it couldn't be accessible.
Okay. Alex, was that it?
Yes, thank you.
So, does anyone care to make a motion? Do you want me to take a stab at it here? Is there any more discussion from the board today?
I just want to reiterate the kind of the horizontal narrative that's going on here. As a pedestrian, even as someone on a bicycle, or even in your car, at a 1st floor level, let's say even on the Forest elevation here, you have these windows, and even on the Forest elevation, I appreciate, the garage door that's semi-see-through, and then, the main entry to the residences and additional windows. I know that it's open on the corner, but it just doesn't feel like an inviting opening, and I don't see why anybody would want to actually look in there. And then on the is it Emerson? Is it, it's on the Emerson side? There aren't too many openings. It's just a wall and then, another dark, uninviting space. And then same goes for that second floor. I mean, I'm just looking for some more human scale, interest, open, inviting spaces, that make it interesting to look through. And I just don't see enough of that. So just wanted to reiterate that. And as far as the parking, I mean, if it doesn't work, maybe the program, has to change. I mean, I really want it to work, and I don't want you to have to change the program, but I think that's kind of the answer or what all of us, may be holding back from saying, but, it's worth something to kind of to sit on, and so.
Could you clarify what you mean by the program doesn't work?
Well, if the parking doesn't work, and, right now. It works, but if it becomes a big problem, then maybe, programmatically something needs to change, which.
Is it likely to become a big problem? I mean, I think that the parking conforms currently to what
Well,
their
it sounded like
program
from a
is.
staff level that the accessible parking is still a pretty big issue.
Yeah, we still have a concern about, things being what they are right now, people are doing it, it's existing, but this is a discretionary review. And so the end result is of concern to us that people will be backing out rather than exiting a safer way. So we still have concern about the parking, the ADA parking space. And
I think what I heard from the board today was we'd prefer to have this parking arrangement than take the chance of risking the tree. And so I think that's the.
But is the parking something that we have purview over? I mean, if we okay it and then later it comes back and staff says, parking is an issue, then basically we're okaying the program.
So let's be clear about what we're talking about here. We're not talking about whether or not the parking should be a certain size stall with a certain arrangement of striping. What we're talking about is a design choice to put the parking in this particular location and how the building would otherwise be modified, or potentially the biological resources would be risked if the parking was arranged differently. That's what I see us having purview over. And our direction to staff in regard to placing the parking in this way in order to allow for the design to occur in this way is meaningful. It's not beyond that as I see it.
right, there is a code issue, and so if the applicant, can't find another way to resolve it, or we can't figure out another way, working with Public Works for that tree, possibly a design enhancement exception could be applied for, and then we'd have to consider those findings and weighing the options and the findings.
Okay, yep, thank you for your clarification.
Okay.
Well, let me make a point then, and maybe I agree that the tree is much more important than the parking space, but that doesn't mean I'm happy with the parking space the way it is. And I agree with Board Member Kim that says just because I say the tree is more important doesn't mean I'm willing to accept the parking space the way it currently is designed. That means think of something else.
Okay. So you're hearing the comments? Yeah. You can do what you want with that. So with that, I think I'll make a motion that we continue this item. Do you have a sense for how quickly you might want to come back? Because what I'd like to do is continue it to a date certain. If we can, otherwise we'll renotice the project and allow you to just have flexibility about when you come back.
Staff would like to weigh in as well. I know you're asking the applicant, but we are planning to apprise the ARB about this, HRB about this project, and revised plans we would probably want to share with the HRB as well. And so I just would feel more comfortable if we just didn't have a date certain, given the work that we're going to be doing, looking at the revisions. And
so you'd prefer to renotice?
There could be some programmatic changes that are important to discuss.
You'd prefer to just renotice the project
Yes.
when the time comes,
Yes,
and
I do.
allow the applicant and HRB and everyone
Right.
flexibility as to how long they spend?
Yeah.
Okay.
We need time to process
All right,
things.
so I think with that we will, my motion will be that we continue this item to a date uncertain, at which time the project will be renoticed to the public. I'm hopeful that we'll get public here to comment as well. Mr. Borok, thank you for coming. I hope the information that was in the plan set that staff shared with you provided the information that you needed. If you have more, please feel free to look online. And we'll look forward to seeing how the project develops.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Quick question for staff. Has there been a date set for this project to go in front of the HRB?
Well, yeah, the current plan set and the historic resource evaluation will be shared with the HRB in their packet that goes out today. They have their meeting next week on Thursday, so we're looking forward to hearing from them. The applicants are going to present to them as well the current project, but we will report out on the ARB's continuance and just give them a short list of things that you're looking for.
Thank you.
Could we maybe take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, just being asked for a 5-minute break, so we'll just set the clock here and we'll come back together in 5 minutes. Thank you. All right, so if we're ready to come back together, I think we'll get started here on our third item. We have a preliminary review application before us today. So the subject of this review will be 130 Lytton Avenue, request by Heather Young of FGY Architects on behalf of Tarleton Properties for preliminary architectural review of modifications to an existing 47,352 square foot, 4-story office building and site, Zone District CDCP, Downtown Commercial Pedestrian Shopping Combining District. And we have staff here to make a report.
Good morning, Chair and ARB members. Thank you. This project is presented today for preliminary architectural review. The project consists primarily of core and shell improvements to the existing office building at the corner of Lytton Avenue and Alma Street, across from the Caltrain station. The project also includes a new roof terrace with a retractable awning, but with permanent awning support posts where no public roof access is currently available. The project also includes new site improvements, such as new landscaping and pedestrian-oriented street furniture and bicycle racks. The applicant has brainstormed 3 options for the improvements that they'd like to review with the ARB this morning. All options are designed to be a gross floor area net neutral or net loss project, and the project does not propose to adjust any existing parking conditions. The options are oriented largely towards spatial questions that the applicant has today, but the plans don't necessarily have skin or materials or colors specified at this time. It's been a while since any adjustments have been made to the building. The last approvals were from the 2004 timeframe, when the entry was redesigned, the pine trees were designated, and the light sculptures were added. The building is a grandfathered facility in regard to a few aspects of the building, including gross floor area, parking, and possibly height, which the applicant will further clarify today. These aspects will also be clarified in the forthcoming formal application. Staff would work carefully on the formal application to process and confirm all of the project data in regard to these questions, also including in regard to any requirement to access the underground garage at some time in the future. The grandfathered status of the building brings up the Palo Alto Municipal Code Section 1818-120 that states a grandfather facility may remodel, improve, or replace site improvements on the same site, provided the following key aspects: no increase in floor area, no shift in the building footprint, no increase in the height, building envelope, or other increase in size, or increase in the degree of non-compliance. While not able to resolve or clarify specific policy topics at this preliminary architectural review stage, staff has oriented the staff report to highlight key sections of the municipal code that might influence design of the project for ARB's early consideration. In particular, staff would be interested in feedback on the project's relationship to the pedestrian shopping combining district, and the requirements to at least design to accommodate retail at some point or not prohibit it. The visibility of the rooftop terrace and the permanent supports, the proposed tree removal that urban forestry considers a key landscape feature, and any early thoughts on future building signage. The formal application will include a request to utilize the design enhancement exception process under Code Section 1876-050 for the proposed improvements. So, another key question for today's discussion is the question of if the proposed options are enhancing the building's appearance without impacting surrounding properties and might be going in the direction of supporting a design enhancement exception, of which one criteria is that the improvements could be considered by the ARB and the Director of Planning as minor exceptions to zoning regulations and could possibly meet the DEE findings. And I have the DEE findings here if you have any questions. Staff has not received any public comments on the project to date and would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you, and looking forward to your comments.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, let's move to the applicant for a presentation.
Good morning, board members. I'm Heather Young from Fergus Garber Young Architects, and we're here today to share with you some preliminary thoughts for a core and shell improvement of 130 Lytton. As you saw in your packet, we've got documentation on the existing building and 3 different alternates as to how it might be improved. The first option was developed in direct response to a community meeting that was held in January of this year. And at that time, they made some specific comments about the corner of Alma and Lytton and how it could be greater enhanced. And then the second and third options were developed afterwards to take those comments even further. Just to give you some orientation, the project is this highlighted zone at the corner of Alma and Lytton, directly across the street from the train station, 1 block off of University Ave. You can see it here as well. The project was developed as 3 phases in the mid-'80s. There was a first phase that was a post-tension concrete structure, a second phase that was a steel moment frame structure, and a third phase on a separate property owned by a different entity that was providing parking specifically to support the Phase 1 and Phase 2 project. All 3 phases were built sequentially in 84, 85, 86, and they predate the CDC and the pedestrian overlay. You can also see on the site analysis the bus lines, the traffic lines, and the pedestrian traffic, which is predominantly along Lytton to take people to and from the train station. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the architecture and the style of the project. It is a red brick building that has a number of serrated facades on Lytton and Alma and a lot of large-scale glass elements. And part of our goal was to change the scale of the facades to make them more finer grained, more pedestrian friendly, frankly, and to calm the facades and regularize them, integrate them more with the architecture of the surroundings. You'll notice that the new project at 100 Lytton is a masonry-clad facade, and the brick here is also masonry. We wanted to maintain a lot of that, but to calm it and contemporize it a bit. Another primary goal was to dramatically improve the thermal and acoustic performance of the exterior facade, and so all of the glazing will be of a very superior quality. The mechanical systems are original right now, and those would be removed and replaced with more efficient and quieter units. Those are important points because there is an existing condominium development adjacent to the project, and we are very sensitive to the impact of this existing project and how it could impact the residents in the future. Rebecca had mentioned that there were some verification points on the existing building size, and we apologize that we did not provide that information to her early enough to get into the staff report. But the original documentation has the top of the parapet at 50 feet. The existing penthouse at the stairwell that goes and currently serves the roof is at 57'3". The top of the penthouse over the elevator is at 60 feet, 9.5 inches. Those are existing conditions. And there's also an existing mechanical roof screen that's at 54'6". And the roof elevation itself is a warped post-tension plane, and the highest point of it is 47 feet 10. I should also mention that the existing ground floor is 18 inches below grade, which has presented a number of accessibility challenges, as you noticed in the plans. You can see here that the existing elevation and the canary pines, which were noted as being protected as part of the 2004 ARB condition of approval. The canary pines is a topic that we would like to hear a little bit more from you about. Our proposal actually removes those trees and replaces them with what we consider to be a more appropriate landscape element. Some new feature trees that would be put in at a less of a vertical scale and more of a horizontal scale. And the 3 canary pines, you probably have noticed, have had the branches removed up to the 3rd and some places the 4th floor level. So it's basically a lollipop tree with a stick, and yeah. So we feel strongly that there are better and more urban goal reinforcing landscape options than those current pines. You can also see on the Lytton facade that very dramatic serration of the facade, and it hovers over the ground plane. The proposal that you're going to see is fairly consistent on all three options, where the serrations are calmed and the structure of the wall comes down to the ground plane, creating a very shallow setback to the glazing. The glazing is actually increased in size on that facade. In addition to the goals that I just mentioned about improving the exterior envelope and the mechanical systems, we would also like to replace the elevators and put in code-compliant elevators. The elevators do not currently serve the roof, and part of this proposal would be to have the elevators serve the roof. And in order to do that, the existing mechanical penthouse for the elevator would elevate 18 inches, and that would be part of a design enhancement exception. Additional goals were to improve the pedestrian experience, to improve the relationship of the building to the pedestrian on both the Lytton and the Alma facades. And all 3 proposals do that by increasing the amount of ground floor glazing, increasing the landscaping and pedestrian lighting on those 2 facades. And we also are proposing in all 3 improving the entrance to the building, but in very different ways. Option 1 maintains the existing location of the entrance, but enlarges its perceived relationship to the street so that it is a more clear entrance location. It does look a little bit like a side door, back door at the moment. And options 2 and 3 take a much more radical approach by saying that the actual appropriate location for the entrance to this building is at the corner of Lytton and Alma. And that is not only in response to the SurveyMonkey building across the street, which has its entrance at the corner, but also the fact that Lytton is a major gateway to downtown Palo Alto. It's highly visible from the train line and from Alma. And this is frankly, it's a large building, and it's on the Alma corridor. And we felt that it was more appropriate to have a stronger entry at that Lytton-Alma corner. It's a larger urban gesture. Option 1 does not neglect that corner, though. There's currently a exhaust shaft which has a small canopy and some minimal seating adjacent to it. And one of the comments that came back from the community meeting was the request that that shaft be removed and that corner be more pedestrian friendly. And we believe that option 1 does achieve those goals. Some additional goals that we had were not to change the building's structural system. As I mentioned before, it's really a complicated structural system. And so the proposals that you've seen are allowing the dramatic, I believe, improvements to the facade, but maintaining that structural system. The project, I can get closer here. The project also is proposing not to change the use. From day one, the building has been used as a commercial office building, and there's no proposal to change that. But we very much wanted to respect the pedestrian overlay and allow for future opportunities. And that's one of the reasons why you've got that increased glazing at the ground floor. And again, the greater definition of the landscape and the lighting to make it a much better pedestrian space. As you've looked through this, and I'm sure you've spent a good bit of time looking at the design, looking at how the different options respond to the existing conditions and hopefully enhance those. You've noticed, no doubt, the your little light flashing over there. Am I on? No, still not on. Hello?
Yep.
Hello? Oh, great. Okay, great. What did you do?
There was a button that had been turned off somehow.
Oh, okay.
But they were also
We should, maybe we should put a cover over that button.
Excellent approach.
All right, so for people who are watching from home, we had a power glitch and everything went out for a moment, but I think we just took a break while we were figuring out what was resolved, and now that we're back on, we'll
Thank you.
ask Heather to continue for us.
Thank you very much. So this actually skipped a bunch. But one of the things you'll notice in your packet was an FAR diagram. There's an existing 541.5 square foot hole on the ground floor that was opened as part of the 2004 ARB approval, and it has to do with the lease for the parking in the adjacent Phase 3 structure. The lease has been extended 35 more years, and the owner would like to fill that hole in. It never was a structural hole. From the day one in '84, it was built as a breakaway slab, so it could always go away again. But we wanted to take the opportunity to improve the efficiency of the ground floor, and by bringing 541 square feet to the ground floor, that means we have to remove it from other places on the building. And so what you're seeing there is the FAR removed and relocated, how it shakes out in the three different options. Yeah, I know, there's a lot going on there. The roof terrace, you'll notice in all three options, there's a reduction of FAR. On the next diagram, this is one we really would like to get your comments on. we want to support the CDC and the P overlay. This is not a project starting from scratch where we've got a beautiful set of zoning goals and criteria. This is a project starting from an existing building that was built that predates all of those things. Our goal is to move towards those goals that are set out in the zoning ordinance. And we would very much like to improve the pedestrian experience. And we think that option one is lovely, but we think that the entrance at the corner of Alma and Lytton is a much stronger support of those goals. However, it breaks the envelope. And that's the grandfathered existing envelope of the building. And so what you're seeing in this diagram is the three proposals and how they would need a design enhancement exception in order to move forward. So there's many places here where we've pulled the building envelope inboard, but this is only highlighting where the envelope is broken. Some of them are very minor. It's because of a structural issue and trying to, again, calm and rationalize the facade, that there might be a little hint of orange at the Lytton Alma's corner, just to square things off and clean it up. Or there might be another little piece over on Alma at the frontage adjacent to the residential units, where that piece of facade has moved back, but again, trying to square it off and calm some of these 45-degree angles. But we would very much like to hear if you think you would be able to support a project that challenges our definition of envelope. We'd also like very much to hear your thoughts about the Canary Pines and the proposed landscape with the feature trees. And we'd also very much like to hear your overall thoughts on the design and how the proposed design, we believe, is a dramatic improvement, not just from thermal and energy and mechanical and acoustic, but from an environmental, from how it fits into our community and has the ability to be a good neighbor for years to come. I'm sure you have a number of questions, but I'll stop there, and I think there might be a couple of community members who also have some comments they'd like to share. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for the presentation. We'll go to board technical questions, and I have one card from the public so far. I think it looks like there might be another coming, but you know, the one thing that I didn't hear is, why are you doing this? And I get all the technical aspects and all the you know, the complicated pieces that we're doing, but what's driving this project?
What's driving the project?
It's the only thing I didn't hear.
Sorry, thank you.
No, it's okay.
I'll clarify. So as you saw in the parking overview, the project was built in the 80s. It was sold in the early 2000s. It was sold again in 2005. It was sold, I think, 2 more times. Our client purchased it in about a year ago, in early 2014. And it has A9 is the tenant, Amazon, a fantastic, well-known tenant. And they said, you know, we've got another new owner, and, you know, we've got a problem with our elevator. We've got a problem with our mechanical systems. And it's really hot on these days, and it's really cold on these days. And combined with that, the owner recognized that this is Palo Alto. And this building, to many people, not to all, but to many people, does not represent the best that Palo Alto architecture can share with the community. And they see it as a long-term investment. I'll be frank, the building has more FAR than it would otherwise be allowed under today's code. And they think that this is an opportunity that's a win-win for the community to take what's already there and make it better. And they see this as a long-term investment. This is not an inexpensive project, but it is all about core and shell and facade improvements.
That's exactly what I was trying to get to, is to understand what the driver is here.
Sure.
Because typically when we see someone do something this dramatic to a building, it's in order to take advantage of FAR that hasn't been used, or to do
This is
an
existing.
accessibility upgrade of some sort, but
Yeah.
this is quite different. So I'll look forward to the discussion we're going to have here. So
Sure.
board technical questions? Vice Chair Guyer? Board Member Liu?
So I just have a question on the parking. So I didn't quite pick up I just connected some of the dots. I think that
Sure.
the whole was for a future ramp
From Alma.
if the lease was not renewed.
Yeah.
And so we have the lease is renewed, and then if I understand the report again correctly, is that if we fill in the hole for the ramp and the lease is not renewed in 35 years or whatever, then we're saying it has to go somehow get resolved with the parking assessment district. That's just, they'll have to pay for
Yeah.
those spots.
Or they'll have to work with the city to provide access to the spots that they have. As
Somehow.
well as find a way to provide the spots that are currently provided by the adjacent garage.
Okay. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, were some of those spots in the garage available for public use at a certain time of the day?
Never.
Ever? Never?
Never.
I thought that there was some, like, in the evenings or whatever, but I could be wrong. I may be mixing it up with the Arbitrary.
Arbitrary has that condition. I believe there are 6 spots. You may know better.
Okay,
But that's next door.
Yeah,
That is a city, it's a public-private partnership. This has always been a private garage.
Okay. I think that's my mix-up. Thank you.
Board Member Kim?
No technical questions.
Great. So with that, we'll go to our public discussion. I have one card. So Mr. Summer, if you could approach the mic. Again, just identify yourself for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi. As said, my name is Martin Summer. I own a condo just adjacent to this building. It's in the Arbitrary which has the HOA. Let me just put it out on the paper. I'll put out there what my objective here is, and I'll give you some background on how I get there. So I'm coming on 20 years owning my condo. I work as an engineer in Silicon Valley. I absolutely love this building for what it represents both visually and historically, and I'll go into that. Right now, just as a similar example of what's going on, from what I understand, I know the owner. I talked to him a number of times. This building, or this project, started as an internal maintenance and upgrade. They needed to upgrade the elevator, and they wanted to upgrade the glazing, a few other things. And like many projects, we all know, it seems to have bled to the outside. And the greatest threat that I see is actually changing the external character of this building. And a quick analogy is across the street we have, 261 Hamilton. Used to be a medical building. People love the exterior of it. They're upgrading it inside, but they're retaining the outside of the building. So my request is to keep the outside, the facade, both mostly on Lytton, but perhaps on Alma the same. And here's where I'm coming from. First off, I find it to be very attractive. It has a unique signature design to it. It's a very clean design. From a historical perspective, looking around, I think a number of us actually remembered DEC, our digital equipment, VAX VMS, the whole 9 yards. DEC, from what I understand, DEC built this building for one of their chief engineers to come out here to try to get a foothold in Silicon Valley. Since then, Compaq bought it, and then since then, there's private ownership, but Amazon is in there. So for me, this is showing the progress of Silicon Valley from hardware to software to services. And so it has a historical significance. The red brick really comes from the East Coast. As you know, there's a lot of red brick on the East Coast. It's one of our unique buildings in Palo Alto that actually has red brick, and I would love to keep that. The slanted windows are meant to be a progressive, modern, creative thinking, out-of-the-box type of approach. So when the scientists and engineers went there in the morning, they looked at something different and perhaps thought different in the inside. If at all, you know, so I went to the community event the other night, or back in January. I gave a lot of input. I see perhaps some of it is taken in, but not the facade. One of the comments was, and I say I'm running out of time here real quick, I would advise if there's any changes on the outside.
Mr. Summer, if you could wrap up, we're
okay, great.
Long beyond the 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Open the bottom to retail, just like the building across the street. Survey Monkey is open to retail. Its office on top. Retain the creative design versus what I call a nondescript box. You know, it's a beautiful building, and let's keep it, update the inside, and reglaze it, and be done with the project.
Thank you. All right, and I don't have any other cards, so we'll close the public portion of the hearing and return to the board for discussion. And we'll begin with Vice Chair Guyer.
Okay, a couple of things based on, I guess, the questions we talked about. Let's start with the simple stuff, I think. The landscaping with the trees, I agree. The trees have gotten just way too big, and they end up being a 35-foot pole with a tree on top of it. So I don't have a problem with modifying that. As to having to pick a selection, actually, I prefer option 3, which makes the corner a stronger statement. Yet, having said that, I don't like, or maybe the other way to put it is, I like the stronger link of the parking garage to the building in option 1. So I like the one corner of 1, yet the overall building of 3. If you understand what I mean. I don't like where it just dies and separates the two, and there's a little door there. It doesn't need to. I agree with the fact that I think a building like this should probably have the entry at the corner, and not. I don't like the sort of lopped off corner concept that the original building has, nor your option 1. So now let's see what other questions. Maybe you can reaffirm what exactly you wanted us to respond to.
You've done 2 of the 3. Thank you very much.
And what was the third one?
The third one has to do with the overall design concept.
Oh, okay, okay.
Is, addressing Martin's comments.
I could appreciate your concern about the brick and everything else, and I guess I like the concept of the brick because it is unique, but I don't know. I've never been a real fan of the style of the building. The sawtooth design, I've never, and I actually kind of like, in a way, the sawtooth is helping, I think, the newer design, because it allows various areas where you juxtapose the two and you get these nice little triangular open spaces elevated on especially the Alma elevation. So I like the overall scheme of the project. I don't have a problem with the rooftop enhancement. Yeah, I mean, there's a good example on 3 there. I like the way it makes the corner and the Alma elevation much more lively, and creates a nicer space for its inhabitants to occupy. I think that'll do it for now.
Thank you very much. Board Member Liu.
So thank you, Heather. I go by this building a lot. To get somewhere downtown, usually go through Alma and Lytton. And I would just say, at night, it's really awful. It's just way too dark, just for, building lighting, but also the window shades on the ground floor seem to be closed. And then all of the landscaping on Alma seems too heavy for that particular site. So yeah, I think there's definitely room for improvement, and I do think the corner entry would help a lot. Yeah, so I could definitely go there. At the same time, I am actually somewhat supportive of the comments by Mr. Summer. There's something being lost in the design of the building, in the proposals, and I think I might just say try to keep some of it. And it may be just like the window patterns are getting too square, or it may be that the railings are becoming really busy, with the new railings that you're adding and all of the additional decks. Something seems to be getting lost in there, and I think it sounds like you're very early on and with regard to like materials and detailed designs, but I would just pay attention to do those. So I'm not saying that you can't change the building, but I would just say that I think that there may be ways of integrating the changes to fit within the style of the building. Were you thinking about removing all the brick and putting in stucco, or do you have any big, are there any big concepts about that? Or?
Great question.
Yeah.
Actually, we were planning to maintain it as a brick building, but we were planning to paint the brick as part of the calming. And the red, it is a very East Coast color, but we were hoping to tone that down quite a bit. And we actually didn't want to bring colors and materials today because that just opens up a whole much larger discussion. We were really trying to focus on the larger concepts, but yes, brick to stay.
Okay, good. And then you mentioned replacing the trees, but you didn't say exactly what you would replace them with, and is there an idea about
There is, and we have two specimen trees. Mark, do you have the names of those specimen trees? Maples.
Is there
I'm sorry?
Is it like a canopy tree?
Yes.
Like a red maple or a...
Very larger maples, and they're actually fairly accurately depicted in the images. The idea is that they would be ultimately, obviously, mature trees, 35 or so feet, and that they would have a large canopy. We very much like the color and the fact that they have a life. It's a nice combination to complement the existing street trees.
Right, which are sycamores or not?
Some are sycamores. The ones on Lytton are...
Those are the, yeah.
Thank you, yeah. The Dave Doctor had actually offered that he would be, I believe, and Rebecca can correct me if I'm misspeaking, that he was open to replacing the two trees at the corner of Lytton and Alma to coordinate with a new entry and get them appropriately located to sort of open that. Is that your recollection?
I think that the street tree topic, Dave Doctor thought similar to what Heather just stated, and also he was concerned about the growth pattern of the existing street trees regarding near the location of the existing bus stop. That maybe a new tree could be put in there.
Okay, and then on the okay, so I think we have some staff was asking for some comments on the P district, on the pedestrian combining district. And to me, ideally, it would be great to get retail in there. We have some new retail right across the street, but in general, it's not really connecting to, we don't have enough to connect it to University Avenue. Like to me, it's like a tough argument to make for prospective retailers. Like yeah.
May I?
Yeah.
There's, I'm sorry to say, an additional existing challenge, which is that the ground
Correct.
floor is 18 inches below.
Lower. Right, so that's huge.
Yeah, and you've probably noticed on the ground floor plans that there's a significant ramp that's required to get you from sidewalk, which won't change, down to the ground floor level.
Yeah, so I was going to say that there are, depending on how the lobby is designed and if there are amenity spaces for the occupants of the building, that they could be near the entrance, meaning it's just more, instead of just like cubicles or something facing the sidewalk. If there's a way of doing that, it just makes it more light and open and airy. I would just say like digital, right, deck, like they were known for not having any amenity space in the buildings. They actually wanted, they wanted to be down, right? I mean, they were legendary for this. They wanted the employees to go out and about, and that's why they located in a downtown area versus like Page Mill Road. And so it seems to me that this building probably doesn't really have that unless it's been remodeled or whatnot, but it probably,
no, and
yeah.
in fact, A9, because they have international locations, they're extremely security conscious. If you get into one building and break its security, you effectively have access to their entire network. So that's been a challenge in working with them. But I did want to mention that if you look at the ground floor plans for option 2 and 3, you'll see that the ramp is actually located along the Lytton facade. And so although it wouldn't necessarily be bringing people from the exterior to the interior on Lytton, there would be a constant flow of people going from the lobby to other parts of the building along that facade. So we were hoping that that would help to invigorate that elevation.
Great. Thank you. I did not notice that.
Yeah.
But that's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah,
Something,
yeah,
that's actually was, right.
Right,
More
ways of
public
improving
space.
the visual engagement.
Great. Regarding the DEE, and it seems to me this may be challenging for people in the community about changing the envelope. I mean, we have people who take a very literal, strict interpretation of that. So it seems to me that that could be challenging for your project. I mean, you know, like people may appeal the project based just because of that. And I think my other comment to, I'm sorry, back to the pine trees was the, you know, I've had a couple conversations with the mayor who thinks that really there should be more retention of trees. So I mean, I would just consider that. And then I think the other factor in my mind is that right now there's a mix of evergreen and deciduous trees, and you're proposing like all deciduous trees. It may be, for certain, it may actually work okay if you're combining like sycamores and maples. Just the time frame of when they leaf out and drop leaves is sort of overlaps, so it's not like there's the window of when it's like completely leafless is shorter. It's relatively short, right? I'm saying January to March, versus if you had like if it was just all one kind of tree, it could be 6 months of, you know, looking fairly bare. And then I think the other thought I had was with regard to the existing pine trees is that they are providing shade to the decks, and it shows in the aerial photos. And it seems to me that that's fairly nice, although I understand that they could be blocking the view too, which is also very beautiful looking out to the hills. So to me, it's a delicate balancing act, and I'm hard pressed to go against like our urban forestry staff. I mean, they know far better than I do. So I think you have to make a really compelling case to go against the staff recommendation. And You had asked about signage too, I think, or staff had asked about signage, and I don't have any. I'm not sure I have a thought about that, but like, I think what's being shown, I'm not thrilled with what's there, but I don't know. I mean, that's just a placeholder, I would imagine. I think I would say just generally, I know that a lot of the prominent companies downtown want wall signs for their offices on Lytton and whatnot, and it's, I don't know, I think some of them, it's been a struggle to get them integrated into the design of the building. So I would just encourage you to, however possible, to get the signs to be compatible with the, integrated, to do whatever you can to get it more integrated. And I think that's all that I have. Oh, I think, so I do have a preference for 2 or 3, and then it seems to me the difference between 2 and 3, is subtle, and I guess it would really go down to like the tree, if the trees are retained or not, like the pine trees are retained, and also the balancing act between the deck, right? You're adding a deck in scheme 3 that's not in scheme 2.
Correct.
Right by the corner.
Yes.
And so to me, that's a
right
balancing
there.
act of how strong the entrance reads versus the deck. And I would say at the moment, like 3, the deck and the entrance are kind of fighting each other, possibly. I don't know. I mean, it depends on the actual design. They're right next to each other.
Exactly, good comments. And I think our thought there had been, we were trying to find ways, again, to improve the pedestrian, those first 2 floors along Alma. And we felt that by dragging the momentum across Alma, and also providing locations for people to have visual engagement with pedestrians and the vehicles on Alma and people on the train, that it was, again, trying to support the pedestrian overlay.
Right, and I would agree that existing building is fairly weak with regard to that. So did you have a preference between 2 or 3? You like 3?
We like 3, yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
I think I have a preference for 2 at the moment, but it's not a strong thing, but I think that the corner entrance is really critical.
Well, we feel similarly, and I agree with your comments about the DEE, and that's why I brought it up, because although all of the items proposed in options 1, 2, and 3 are within the setbacks, except for the height limit on the elevator overrun, it is that envelope issue. And we felt actually that this was a great opportunity for the policy goals to confront an existing condition and really find out where our values lie. If it really is about making a better community and a long-term opportunity to enhance the community experience, then yeah, option 2 or 3 move us in that direction. But if we are focused on literal definitions that don't always apply very well, then we might be shooting ourselves in the foot. And we wanted to be open about that with you.
Okay, and I think my last comment is related to the P district and your ground floor windows on Lytton.
Okay.
So I would just say, like, our urban design guidelines for downtown encourage larger windows on the ground floor than the upper floors. So if there's a way of dropping that down, it'd be great. And then also, if the other mistake that I see people make is they put the same glass on the upper floors as on the lower floors. And the problem is with the new glass is, we're trying to minimize heat gain, especially like on western walls. So it tends to be like tinted and reflective, right, with a silver coating, like a low E.
No.
Slightly. I mean, I'm saying, I'm not saying like mirrored glass, but even just the regular double pane glass.
I think we'd be looking for a low E high performance glazing as opposed to reflective glazing.
No, but I would say even low E, like low E is a silver coating on the glass.
Okay.
I'm just saying, pay attention to I think it's fine to do on the upper floors, but just pay attention to what goes down on the first floor, and it may
Okay.
have to be different. If you have any tint on, if there is any tints, and it's pretty common on office buildings to have tinted windows on the upper floors, like a gray tint or whatever.
Okay.
I'm just saying that I see it on most buildings. That is too dark for the first floor, from what I see.
I agree. I
So-
agree. And I don't believe we have any plans to do anything other than clear glazing for the
Yeah.
building. But
Good.
good point. I wanted to respond positively to your comment about differentiating potentially the glazing size pattern between the ground floor and the upper floors. That's not something that we had focused on, and thank you. That's,
I don't think it's a must.
That's an interesting thought.
It's not a must, it's just a generic
No,
comment in
it's
the
a good-
design guidelines.
It's a good observation.
Especially if the ramp, if it's lower, if the floor level is lower.
Yes.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
I'll pick up where Alex left off with the windows. I also agree that the Lytton Avenue elevation, that those windows could probably come down all the way to the floor. And then I think on the Lytton Avenue elevation, I was kind of sad to see that kind of sawtooth elevation characteristic completely disappear from all three of the options. To me, it seems like all three of the options, the only thing that it really keeps from the existing building is kind of that flat diagonal wall at the corner. And I think it'd be nice to see some other really defining characteristics of the existing building be carried over somewhat so that it doesn't appear to be, you know, a brand new building, even though it is a building that's being reused. Thank you for the FAR diagrams. That was pretty helpful for me to be able to see what we're dealing with here. I also wanted to thank Mr. Summer for coming out. I wish we had more people from the public and community members really come out and speak about the project, because I think, you know, being in the downtown area, that it is really critical to figure out and get a sense of what the people really want.
Sorry, I should just let you know, we noticed 250 people for the community meeting, and 3 people came.
Yeah.
And we had, Mr. Summers was one of them, and we also had one other person from the community meeting who was here earlier but had to leave, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to take away from your project in particular. It's just, it's
no.
just kind of sad, I think, that at all the ARB meetings, we have so few people from the public actually come out and speak, and then, you know, after our meeting, of course, then that's when the public speaks, so.
Sorry, would there be a chance for me to speak twice? Because there's something I would like to correct that either Roger or Randy threw out later on, just at the end, just let me correct something that was up there.
Yeah, sorry, typically we don't do that. The project is going to come forward again, and so happy to have you come back another time.
Yeah, I think Board Member Liu really covered a lot of the comments that I wanted to make. Just thank you for coming with the preliminary proposal, and I think if I had to pick an option, it'd be somewhere between options 2 and 3. I had similar remarks with Board Member Liu about the deck carrying over in option 3 that may or may not be the best thing, but that's, you know, I realize it's preliminary. Thank you for presenting it. I think whatever option happens, actually, it's much better for the community and the public and pedestrians in particular to be able to have a sense that this is a friendly kind of gateway into the neighborhood. And I pass by here all the time as well, and I think what currently happens at the corner is somewhat sad, and to see that enlivened much more beyond option 1 would be the best way to go about that. You had mentioned keeping the brick but coloring over it. Would that brick only be at that diagonal wall at the corner, or throughout would it be brick?
The whole building.
The whole building would be brick but painted, I see.
Yeah. There would be, up at the roof terrace, there's some new guardrails that would go in, and I think we would introduce a new material there to differentiate from the brick.
Okay.
But the goal is to maintain that masonry character.
And then my final question in closing, are you aware of any parking problems currently with the building and its tenants?
Great question. We were actually talking with Rebecca about that just a couple of days ago. The aerial photos that were taken of the building show
That's a beautiful aerial photo right there,
empty
too.
spaces on the garage. It is currently, we don't see evidence of there being a shortage of parking for the project. As we mentioned a couple of times in there, it's across the street from the train station. I think there are 3 bus lines that serve that corner. It is very well served by public transit, and we don't see any evidence of that building creating a shortfall of parking.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. First of all, thank you for coming in as a preliminary. I think it's always so helpful to do this, and the way you've approached this with multiple options and helping us to understand the evolution of your thinking and your process is so beneficial to me in understanding how you're getting where you are. Let me address first this issue of challenging the concept of envelope definition. And I think that the obvious project to correlate this to is the University Art Building and the discussion that occurred around that. You're not asking for additional FAR. You're not asking to relocate basement FAR up above grade. You're not asking to repurpose FAR that was used in one way in another way. You're just shifting it around within the floor plates. And for me, there's no concern about how this is being handled. It seems ethical, it seems appropriate, it seems consistent with how I would interpret FAR today, and so I would support any exception that's necessary to allow you to resculpt the building in the way that you're proposing. I love that you're adding the roof terrace and other balconies on the building. I think it softens this building in a very nice way. And, you know, I appreciate Mr. Summers' comments. My own position on this building is that it is so severe and so non-approachable today that this is a tremendous improvement and will take this building from, you know, what sort of becomes a fortress and feels like a building that is part of an international suite of offices and is secure and locked down to feeling much more soft and open and accessible. I like the big open windows. I really like the idea of taking the first floor and doing something a little different with that, especially because the floor level is 18 inches down. You could bring the windows all the way to grade and still have some flexibility from the inside about what goes on at the bottom. You don't have to come all the way to grade. You don't have to do it everywhere, but I think you have the opportunity to play with this a little bit, and that would be very nice. I do want to encourage you to try and enhance the pedestrian experience and to allow for the opportunity for retail in the future. I think that it's important to at least make a gesture toward that, wherever that's possible. I don't see any reason to retain these existing trees. I support the retention of good trees that are valuable and haven't been pruned in an unnatural way. I think, you know, if we were looking at a forest of these things and they were all together and they didn't have limbs until 30 feet, it would feel appropriate. But to have these lollipops sticking up, it doesn't add anything to the environment. And again, at the pedestrian experience, it's not valuable at all. And I'd much rather see that replaced with something that has a canopy that provides shade and character and interest at the pedestrian level. I'm happy about the changes that you're making to the design. I don't mind the removal of the zigzag edge. I think the very literal north-facing windows are an interesting idea, but every time I look at the building, I think to myself, that's just not that nice. And this is so much better. I like the idea of creating a rhythm of windows that is larger in scale and gives better visual access into the building. I want to encourage you to, as I do with almost every applicant, it's the drum that I beat all the time, think about the lowest pane of glass being some type of a frit or something that will help to conceal the stuff that happens inside offices. As I look into the building now and there are desks up against the glass and there are things up against the glass, it's not so pleasant to look into those windows. And even if the upper floors are tinted a bit and the lower floor is more clear, the visibility into the building, especially in the evenings as the lights are on the inside, be very dominant. And I think that doing something to control the visual clutter as you look into the buildings is always helpful. For staff, is there an exclusion for the elevator overrun, or do we need to allow for additional height for that? Is there some issue here that we need to be weighing in on?
Well, mechanical equipment is not considered, I think, floor area, but if the elevator actually, if you step out onto the roof, then that piece above is considered floor area. Rebecca knows more
So an
about
elevator lobby associated with elevator overrun is an issue, but the elevator itself is not.
The equipment above the elevator is not an issue, but the actual...
The elevator
itself,
the enclosure that you
walk into.
The elevator moves up into.
I thought it was a height issue where the height of the extension.
I should clarify, the existing elevator stops at the 4th floor, and then there's a mechanical room that is above that at the roof level. This proposal would provide an elevator serving the rooftop. It's a code requirement because the fire department has to get there. And the existing mechanical room overrun is 18 inches short of us being able to get a brand new elevator in there today. And so we would be asking for the extra 18 inches to get the elevator to serve that floor.
And you're saying that the fire department is requiring an elevator to the roof?
Well, the roof terrace is an A3 occupancy.
But you're adding the roof terrace?
Correct.
Right, so it's not an existing condition. But
that's
because
correct.
you're adding the terrace, now you have an accessibility issue where you have to have an elevator that gets up there.
Correct.
And that's driving a need for an additional 18 inches.
Correct.
Got it.
And just to further clarify, there is one stair that currently fully serves the roof. Like, I can walk up the stair, open the door, and be on the roof. That one would be remaining. There is a second stair that needs to occur, and there's an FAR trade-off that we're doing on the roof so that the existing enclosed space between the stair and the elevator would be removed and turned into an outdoor area.
I understand.
And then that area would go to provide for the second stair.
So you're removing lower floor FAR essentially in order to accommodate?
No, we're removing rooftop FAR.
In order to accommodate
In order
rooftop
to
use.
accommodate this stair, but it's
Understood.
still a net reduction in rooftop FAR.
Got it. Okay, and then, so final comments from me are that I'd like to go shopping with your options a little bit. Okay? And I'll tell
Mr.
you.
Potato Head?
Yeah, I'll tell you that on option 1, the northeast entrance between the garage and the building, with the taller canopy and a little bit better statement there, particularly in light of the fact that there's almost always buses parked in front of this and some type of transit. So your number one entrance there, I like that.
Okay.
I prefer that, as I think I've heard others have said. And then at the northwest corner, facing the train, option 3 is definitely my preference in that particular condition. I think, again, just the configuration of the canopy and the character of that entrance feels so much more comfortable to me. But I did want to ask you, what is the likely future for sort of this artistic bus stop pedestrian element that's out there? Because there is certainly a bus and pedestrian accommodation that's being made at that corner, and there's always people waiting there. There's always people sitting on the benches, and so I'm just a little concerned that while I very much like the northwest corner that you've got in option 3, the bench and some of the space that you've shown in option 1 seems like it's a better amenity for the people that use that corner. And so I'm wondering if there's some discussion you might share about this sort of artistic piece, the element that was there and is being potentially removed in option 3.
Great observation. And if you look at option 3 up here, you'll see that there is an outdoor seating space associated with the entry as well as a bicycle parking zone. And your comment about option 1's entry, I think what might be a good solution is to add, as you're saying, have a project that has the option 3 entry and the option 1 entry, and to enhance the seating and pedestrian friendliness of that entry.
I think that goes a long way towards appreciating the CDCP obligations.
Because the buses, as I'm sure you know, they stop on both Alma and on Lytton.
Right.
So you really need to be able to see two different buses, depending on your transit pattern.
No, that's exactly it. Thank you for understanding that.
Can I bring up one thing in the spirit of disclosure? You've noticed that we also very much like the double height entry feature of option 1, but you probably noticed that it also is one of those, I think I went past it, it's one of those orange spots right here.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
So just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that.
Just look at how much more interesting and available and open that is compared to the, the literally compliant version that's shown in 2 and 3. And I think that, it's really obvious to me that we'd much prefer to have that entrance more like option 1 is described.
Great.
But the northwest corner, at the corner of Alma and Lytton, I really do very much prefer the option 3 approach, and it's more open, it's more inviting. I love the idea that there's some recessed lighting at the canopy there that will help to brighten that corner. I think Alex's comments about this being sort of, it almost feels like you're in a back alley somehow when you're walking along there at night, even though you're on this big exposed corner. And I happened to be having some gelato the other day across the street, which was nice, and I was sort of watching how people use the corner, and people really don't like to hang out there. It's very clear they don't like to hang out there. And so if you make this a space that's a little more comfortable, a little more inviting, I think it won't feel so challenging to sit there and wait for your bus or your ride to pick you up from the train. So I think that we've seen 2 really interesting projects today that are reusing existing buildings, and I want to really applaud the effort that you're making for that. I think that updating this building so that it continues to have value is a great approach, and doing what you need to do to make it marketable and comfortable for the inhabitants is just the right thing to do. And so I'll also tell you that managing the board a little bit and bringing us what you want us to focus on at the right time is something that applicants should learn to do. The fact that you're not showing us all the finishes today is fine with me. Right? We're going to look at this a few times. I'm patient, and I'm happy to talk about what you want to talk about today and talk about what you want to talk about tomorrow then. And so that's just great. So does anyone else have any additional comments that they want to bring up?
I'm looking at the options, and on the ground floor, if you're in any of the options, I think with the existing entry area, it seems to me like you're pushing that out, and I don't think it's being counted as added square footage. Am I incorrect in assuming that?
It already is counted as square footage, so it's no change. Yeah.
It already is counted as square
It's
footage?
already, in
Okay.
fact, in 2004, the recognition that the entry needed to count as square footage was one of the things that the 541
I see.
square feet paid for.
Okay, great.
Great, well, I think hopefully we've covered everything that you needed us to do. Is there any further feedback for staff that you're looking for at this point? Great, then I think with
No,
that,
thank
we'll...
you.
All done? Okay, I think with that, we'll close the hearing on this item and look forward to having you come back with a formal
Thank you.
application. Thank you.
Very helpful, thank you.
All right, and Mr. Summer, I don't want you to feel like I cut you off. I think, we're very interested in having your comments. Hopefully you and Ms. French were able to connect about what your issue was, and it's just a matter of procedure and making sure that people get a certain amount of time and we don't change the rules on.
And then also, anything that if you send an email or anything, it all goes into the file, and it would appear in our next packet. The next time we see it, we'll actually read all of that.
Certainly encourage any of the other 250 people or whatever was noticed to do the same, right? If you don't have time to come to the hearing, feel free to send a message. All right, so moving forward then, are there any board or staff announcements, updates, reports, or comments for today? I think it doesn't look like it. And the only thing that I wanted to just point out is we saw a slightly different format today for our staff reports. In the report for 1450 Page Mill Road, the staff had reorganized how they had identified their responses to the Architectural Review Board findings. And I very much appreciated the fact that they were grouped according to categories. It's something that we've had a bit of discussion about in the past. I wanted to just ask the board to weigh in if they had any particular thoughts about that. And my only thought is that under the categories of comp plan and purpose of the ARB, where finding 1 and finding 16 are addressed. And then under compatibility and character, where finding 2, 4, 5, and 6 are addressed, et cetera. I think that I'd like to suggest that we could go a step further. And the whole purpose, I think, of categorizing these and grouping them into logical groups, maintaining all the language, not changing any of our procedure here, but just reorganize how we're addressing these things. It would be my expectation that you would summarize your comments for these items and that you would say comp plan and purpose of ARB, finding number 1 and finding number 16, and then provide one response to both of those findings unless something very specific needed to be addressed for each of those. And so
that is our goal too,
yeah.
To get it. This is kind of the interim, the first cut, given the time we had. So the next cut would be that, would have one paragraph for, addressing the like-minded.
I'm just indicating that I applaud this approach, and I think that it made it much more logical and easy for me to evaluate and read. And so I don't know if other board members have comments that they'd like to add to that. But
No, I also found it helpful and appreciate the effort. Thank you.
great. So with that, I think we've completed our agenda for today, and unless there's anything else, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.